Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Mastered Sexy Jutsu for Harem Part 2. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
The young blonde started to consider the rules as Naruto reviewed his test. Regardless of what Ibuki Morino had said, it was clear that they were expected to cheat. The blonde surreptitiously quickly looked around the room as he considered how and who he could cheat off. At the moment, Hinata Hyuga sat to his right. Sometimes, with a wounded look on her face, she would steal glances in his direction. Understanding why the white-eyed girl appeared so heartbroken, the whiskered blonde gave her a gentle pat on the hand and returned to looking around the room with an apologetic smile. Naruto quickly realized that there were several chunin among the genin who were disguised. The question of how to cheat off of them soon emerged, even though it was clear that they were plants designed for that purpose. The young man with the whiskers closed his eyes, looked down at his test, and started to consider all of his skills. There must be something you can use, Naruki, so hurry up. Perhaps you could do a sort of switcheroo if you were at a loss for ideas. Naruto rubbed his hands together, grinned, and started laughing to himself. As many others turned to stare at him, the blonde glanced around and hurried to his feet, a broad smile lighting up his face. Hi, how's everybody doing? A bunch of tiny balls flew from the blonde young man's sleeves as he raised his hands to wave at everyone. Before the tiny explosives detonated, all they could hear as their eyes grew wide and Naruki blinked a few times was the word, oops. The room was suddenly filled with smoke. The smoke was so thick that everyone was coughing and choking. A disguised Kage Bunshin stole a finished test during the confusion and exchanged it for Naruto's blank one. The Chunin threw open the windows in a short time. Everyone took a few more moments to finish coughing after the smoke had finally cleared the room, and then they all glared at the young blonde who had started the issue. Naruto, still coughing, collapsed back into his chair with tears in his eyes. Ibuki narrowed his eyes and turned to face the blonde. Clever. Very astute. You, accidentally, filled the room with smoke to steal someone else's test, taking advantage of your unpredictable nature. No one suspected it because you're so odd. Well done, boy. As he nodded in admiration of the young man's quick thinking, a tiny smirk played at the corner of his mouth. The final question will be revealed later. Naruto had waited calmly while observing the other people in the room engage in various forms of cheating. Many had actually devised some pretty ingenious ways to pass, but many were caught and their team failed the test. After observing Lee for a while, the blonde noticed that his teammate had slightly shifted one of the mirrors to allow him to copy the answers from her test paper. Naruto had also taken notice of his fellow Jinchuriki, Gaara. While it was kind of cool, that strange eye thing was also a little unsettling. The blonde Jinchuriki shrugged his shoulders, let out a sigh, and bided his 10 minutes until the proctor declared that the final question was about to be asked. Many people in the room gave Naruto another glare when he started humming an arbitrary song. The blonde had only made them hate him and drive them crazy during the test, and now he was doing it once more. He was bored, but that wasn't his fault. He didn't see it that way, but perhaps it was. After all, Naruto Uzumaki had nothing to do but watch others cheat because he had already stolen someone's test. The blonde had absolutely nothing to do after all that time and after discovering what some of them were capable of. Everyone felt relieved when Ibuki finally said that they had to put down their pencils and that the time had come to announce the last question. Everyone else wouldn't have to tolerate the obnoxious blonde, and Naruto wouldn't have to endure boredom any longer. Therefore, from everyone's perspective, it was a win-win scenario. How are they going to lose now? They obviously thought this too soon. Many of them panicked and left as soon as the proctor explained the new rules for the 10th question. The blonde irritant then got to her feet and smiled. I get it. I know what the purpose of this. The proctor showed up at Naruto's side and covered the boy's mouth with a hand before he could say anything more. The scarred man whispered harshly, leaning close. Shut the hell up. Just, shut up, please. When he let go of Ibuki Morino, the blonde Uzumaki looked up into his eyes and nodded slowly, blinking in confusion. It's fine that you figured out the purpose to the question, but if they can't muster up the courage to see this through, do you really think they deserve to be here? Naruto grinned, nodded his head, and then whispered back to the proctor while crossing his arms over his chest. I see your point. Okie dokie then, I'll remain quiet. But if one of my friends looks like they're about to give up, can I at least say something to encourage them a bit? The interrogation and torture expert nodded slowly and sighed. I suppose that would be all right, but it looks like nobody else is leaving. It would seem they became a bit too focused on this interaction between the two of us. I'm starting to regret my decision to shut you up. The blonde young man threw his arms behind his head, smiling at the scarred proctor and laughing to himself. Sue, you'd better remember your promise, Mr. Funny Dude. Do what you need to do and say what you need to say, but then you have to give me a hug and say we're buddies now. Ibuki Morino walked to the front of the room and looked around at everyone who was still there, facepalming. I'm sorry I ever made this decision. After today, please make sure this child never finds me again. Please do me that one favor, Kami-sama, if you have any mercy for someone like me. The proctor of the first exam appeared so defeated that the genin in the room couldn't help but notice. Some decided to laugh at the man's misfortune, but others couldn't help but feel sorry for him. They halted and apologized right away when he glared at the laughing genin, as they were somewhat alarmed by the scarred man. Ibuki grinned as he looked around at everyone. Okay. Those of you that decided to stay and hear the final question, you all pass. Naruto leapt forward and glomped Ibuki to the ground, nuzzling him as someone tried to yell out. He knew buddy friendly friend. It's awesome to make another new friend. What's next? Without even bothering to ask her question, the person who was about to yell quietly sat back down. Instead, as they watched the crazy blonde and Ibuki stand up again, everyone in the room started to perspire. The proctor reached down and gave Naruto a pat on the head while complaining. Okay, you got your hug and I agreed to be your friend. Happy. Ibuki sighed and grinned slightly when he saw the blonde nod enthusiastically. Good. Now. Slowly removing his bandana, the proctor looked around at everyone in the room before explaining the test's objective and the last question. Naruto smiled up at him after he had completed his explanation. I knew it. You just didn't want me saying anything, you big meanie. When something entered through the open window and landed in front of the two friends, Ibuki gave another facepalm and started to respond. A banner that clearly said something appeared in front of them in an instant, but the blonde was positioned behind it and was unable to see what it said. As the two crept to the front of the banner, they noticed a strange woman conversing with the genin. With a sigh, the first proctor approached the woman. You're early, Anko. Besides that, you're lucky the window was open or you'd be paying for the broken glass. Anko, the woman, gave Ibuki a questioning glance before turning to face the other teams in the room. Have you lost your touch or something, Ibuki? Why are there still so many teams left? With a sigh, the scarred T&I specialist gestured for the purple-haired woman to look back. Anko Mitarashi found herself staring down into a smiling blonde's eyes as she did so. Hiya, how are you, pretty lady? What is this? Anko asked, blinking a few times before turning back to face Ibuki and gesturing to the young man behind her. At that, Ibuki shook his head and grinned. That is your problem now. That crazy little bastard has been driving everybody insane. He's also the main reason so many teams are left. So you'd best watch out for this one, Anko. Have fun. Anko sighed and turned back to the boy as Ibuki chuckled ominously and started to gather the tests. What's your name, kid? Naruto tilted his head after giving the woman a long, interested glance. The woman nodded, and the whiskered blonde's eyebrows shot up in wonder at how the child knew her name. So you're Anko. Just to be sure, is your full name Anko Mitarashi? She asked. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Yugao Oni-chan has told me a lot about you. She said we'd be really good friends if we got to meet each other. The purple-haired woman drew the boy into an embrace as her eyes grew wide with recognition. It's about time I got to meet you, ya little runt. Yugao-chan talks about you a lot. She said you'd be participating in the exams this time. It's good to finally meet you. The blonde and his companion turned to see the shocked looks on everyone's faces when they sensed that dozens of eyes were on them. After gathering her thoughts, Anko straightened up and coughed into her hand before continuing. Oh, yeah. All right, the next stage of the exam is held at training ground number 44. Meet me at the entrance in half an hour. Or not, but if you choose not to show up, you automatically fail. Good luck. The snake mistress grinned as she gathered her new friend in her arms and looked down at him. With the blonde in her arms, Anko jumped out of the window and said, You and I are going to have a little chat. I want to get to know Yugao-chan's little brother better. What had just happened in the room left everyone unsure of what to make of it. Before long, Ino turned to face her teammates and the 7 and 8 members of her team. Did that woman just kidnap Naruto? The Forest of Death's entrance. At the moment, Anko and Naruto were waiting at the entrance to training ground number 44 in the tent. Strangely enough, they were drinking tea together and appeared to be very at ease while they waited for the others to show up. Anko spent a few minutes simply unwinding before deciding to attempt talking to the young man. "Su, why don't you tell me about yourself? I've heard things from Yugao-chan, but I want to get to know you a bit better." With a radiant smile, Naruto gestured to Anko's chest. "In a bit. First, can you tell me how you got your breasts so big?" The second proctor's eyes widened, and she narrowed them, giving the boy a dagger-like glare. "Hey, is that any way to talk to a woman? If you want to hit on a girl, there's better ways to do it than bring up their breasts." The young blonde tilted his head and blinked a couple of times at this. The bearded blonde leaned in close and whispered to his new friend, "Wait, Yugao Oni-chan hasn't told you. I guess that makes sense, nobody's supposed to know after all. I'm not really a guy. I'm a girl like you." Anko gave a few more blinks and a look that made it clear she had no idea what the hell was going on. The blonde spoke again as she opened her mouth to speak. "Can you ask the others to leave the tent and watch for the other genin, please?" Slowly nodding, the purple-haired woman turned to face the others. When they nodded with a terrified expression on their faces, Anko smiled and pushed them away. "Please leave and wait outside for the genin. Inform me once it is time to speak to them. In the meantime, nobody is allowed to look into this tent. Is this understood?" Once they were gone and the tent's flaps were shut, Naruto unclasped something Anko couldn't see by reaching behind his neck. Naruto vanished in a flash, and a stunning young woman took his place. There was no longer a bright orange jumpsuit. This young woman, on the other hand, was wearing a red shirt with the black Uzumaki clan logo on the front. Her long hair was pulled back in a single ponytail, and she wore a vest of light purple over her shirt. Additionally, the blonde with whiskers was dressed in black pants with orange stripes running down the legs, which just so happened to highlight her butt. Overall, this young lady had a very striking appearance. Anko couldn't help but smile as she took this young lady in. "Well, I'll be damned, you were telling the truth. I don't see why you want to know how I got my breasts this big. Yours look like they're coming in quite nicely. If I had to take a guess, I'd say they're AB cup maybe." Naruki approached Anko and took a seat next to her, placing her tea on the table in front of her. "Actually, they're already AC cup. I'm wearing a training bra, so they just, look a little smaller. Yugao says I'm developing pretty quickly, but Oni-chan said it's not unusual. From what she tells me, some girls grow pretty quickly." The snake mistress started stroking the younger girl's hair with her fingers after observing Naruki shrug her shoulders. "She's right. I think some of your friends are developing pretty slowly, while others are going at a more, let's just call it a regular pace. Everybody is different, and there's nothing to be ashamed of if you happen to be growing faster in a certain place than others your age are." After giving that a slow nod, Naruki let out a gentle sigh. "Before we continue, I figured you should know that Naruto isn't my real name. I'm Naruki Uzumaki. It's a great pleasure to finally meet you, Anko-chan." Anko gave her friend's Imouto, little sister, a gentle smile. "You already know this, but I'm Anko Mitarashi. It really is a pleasure to meet you, Naruki-chan. I didn't think you'd be quite so cute. And you really have very nice hair. You take really good care of yourself, don't you?" Naruki allowed Anko to keep running her fingers through her hair while grinning and nodding. The blonde with whiskers closed her eyes, leaned into Anko's touch, and said, that feels nice. I try to. Yugao Oni-chan and Gigi made sure I kept myself healthy, and as a girl I just refused to live like a slob." Anko gave a nod of comprehension before her eyes began to sparkle cunningly. She reached up and gently squeezed one of Naruki's breasts, laughing to herself when the blonde squealed and jumped in surprise. They're firm, but I can't get a good feel for 'em through your clothes." The young Uzumaki girl became very irate and made the snap decision to find out exactly what Anko was attempting to accomplish. Naruki winked at the older woman and chuckled to herself before picking up her teacup and taking another sip. What are you doing, Anko-chan? We should save something like that for after our first date." At that, Anko threw an arm around Naruki's shoulder and started to smile. While they were laughing together, Naruki slipped a hand around and squeezed the proctor's butt, saying, "I like you, kid. You've got good taste. Hey." The girl with the whiskers looked into Anko's eyes, giggling even harder, and started to caress her cheek. Smiling, The blonde leaned in and kissed Anko, saying, you do have a firm ass. I thought you might. Before they withdrew from one another, both of them blushing intensely from the moment they had just shared, the kiss lasted for a good few minutes. Soft lips too. Wait, Naruki blinked a few times over before an idea struck her. The young blonde got up from her chair, took off her top, and showed her new friend her bra. Do you think you could give me some advice? This thing feels a little small and it kind of hurts sometimes. My breasts feel really cramped inside of this thing and I'm not sure what else to try. You have no idea how awkward it is trying to find a decent bra for myself when I have to walk around town disguised as a guy. With a raised eyebrow, Anko got up from her seat as well. The snake mistress smiled as she walked around the girl in front of her, observing her appearance. Naruki blushed indignantly at this, but she nodded her head and followed instructions. Okay, take it off. I want to see them. Given that the bra had actually been too small, it seemed the blonde had been truthful with the snake mistress of Konoha. The second stage exam proctor reached up a hand and began to gently examine Naruki's breasts, smiling as she made the young girl moan a few times. Pulling off her overcoat, Anko stepped back and placed it neatly on her chair. Take a look at what I'm wearing real quick, Naruki. Tell me what you notice. Naruki looked at Anko and blushed to herself, but she soon realized something. Well, you're not wearing a bra, but you're wearing some type of fishnet clothing of some sort. It's kinky. Anko grinned at that and moved toward her friend, putting a finger under Naruki's chin and then over her lips to give the young lady a brief smile. The proctor leaned in close, barely putting her lips over Naruki's, then leaned back and grinned at the girl. I'm glad you think so, Naruki. The blonde was pouting now, but she had closed her eyes waiting for the kiss. With a smile on her face, the blonde approached Anko, pushed her into her chair, then straddled her lap and planted another intense kiss on her lips that lasted for a long time. Hey, that wasn't very nice. If you're going to kiss somebody, you should do it properly. They started caressing each other's breasts as their kiss grew more intense. At first, it was playful, but as they played with each other, they soon lost themselves and started groaning. Naruki remained sitting on Anko's lap, but both of them opened their eyes in disbelief and parted ways when they finally understood what they were doing. Glancing into Anko's eyes, Naruki asked in a clear daze, what just happened? Weren't we talking about something before this? Her gaze shifted back to Anko's lips after a few seconds, and she started to trace them with her right index finger. Anko was not complaining at all about this situation, even though she was as red as Naruki. After a few seconds of sucking on Naruki's finger, the snake mistress smirked to herself and started kissing Naruki's arm. Once she got to the girl's neck, she nibbled on the young blonde's neck and started massaging her left breast once more. You really do have a nice body, Naruki-chan. I like it. As she started to groan once more, the whiskered Uzumaki threw back her head and closed her eyes. The assistants outside the tent were looking at each other and perspiring. Should we do something about this? There's still 10 minutes to go and they're starting to attract attention from some of the teams. The other helper looked back at the tent and shook her head. The female assistant nodded after observing her colleague shake his head negatively. I don't think I even want to know what's going on in there right now. Besides, do you want to piss Anko off? She said. Me either. I say we pretend this never happened and only bother her when it's time. Agreed. The male assistant, who was currently experiencing some difficulties, promptly said, agreed. He was struggling to keep everything under control, and the groans emanating from inside the tent were extremely arousing. The pictures that were playing in his head were not at all helpful. Anko smirked up at her young friend and drew her mouth away from one of Naruki's nipples as she returned to the tent. Naruki nodded slowly as she gasped for air and said, I think we were discussing anything I could suggest to you concerning a bra or something like that. Until you can wander around as your true gender, I suggest you look into getting something like what I'm wearing. It may be somewhat revealing, okay, very revealing, but at least it's comfortable. Actually, I can go get one for you real quick before it's time to address the genin. Sound good. Naruki gave another nod and sat down once more. The workout they had just done together had left her sweating. It was intense, and she was having trouble resetting her mind, even if they had only kissed and caressed each other briefly. The blonde started laughing to herself after seeing Anko vanish in a shunshin. A new playmate for us, I believe, Haku-kun. This could be a three-way relationship. Anko returned with a mesh bodysuit for Naruki in a matter of minutes at most. It wouldn't completely cover the body, but it was fairly similar to the one Anko was wearing at the moment, albeit smaller. With a sheepish smile and a laugh to herself, the snake mistress said, "Got it. Though I wish I had taken my coat, my goods were out for everyone to see. I guess I was kind of distracted." To Anko's delight, Naruki glanced at the suit, grinned, and thanked the woman before she undressed to her underwear and put the suit on. Anko approached Naruki from behind and put her arms around the young blonde's midsection, pulling her back against her before she could put the rest of her clothes back on, with the exception of the bra, of course. "I must say, you do look good, Naruki-chan. I wonder if Yugao-chan would have a fit if you and I decided to be a little something, more than just friends, Naruki started to stutter out a reply, blushing violently, obviously unaccustomed to someone else controlling her to this extent. The strange young blonde took a deep breath to calm herself before smirking and placing a hand on the back of Anko's neck. Maybe. She said. Naruki leaned back against her intimate friend and lowered her head to plant another kiss. This time, however, she winked up at Anko and only lightly touched her lips. "Tell you what, darling, meet me again later after I get through this stage of the exam so we can talk. I have a boyfriend, and I really want to bring you into this relationship. Just imagine the kind of fun we could have, Anko-chan." At this, the older woman actually flushed quite a bit and let Naruki go so she could finish dressing. "Oh no, you don't realize how correct you were, Yugao. Your Udo and I are going to get along great, I believe." Anko inhaled deeply, made her way to her chair, pulled on her overcoat, and smirked as she looked in Naruki's direction. "That sounds like a fantastic idea, Naruki-chan. I can't wait." Anko walked over to Naruki, lifted her up, and then sat her down on the table and leaned in close, giggling to herself. The snake mistress then gave Naruki another passionate kiss before putting her hand inside her pants and giving her slit a single rub. "Yugao-chan is going to be so mad at us both for this, but damn if I don't already like you, kid." The snake mistress slid her tongue into Naruki's mouth as the girl opened her mouth to yell, and they both quickly became engrossed in the kiss. But after a while, the female assistant drew the tent flap back just enough to talk to them both without sticking her head inside. Anko-san. It's TT time. Could you two please stop whatever it is you've been doing and come out now?" Anko grinned down at Naruki and the stunned look on her face as they parted ways. Activating the genjutsu again, the snake mistress reached down, grabbed the necklace, and tied it around Naruki's neck again. "I think I'm going to enjoy my time with you, little Naruto-chan." After a few minutes, as Anko reviewed the guidelines for the second phase of the Chunin exams, Naruto and his team stood silent. The proctor started giving out forms to each participant after she had completed her speech. Just before the snake mistress leaned in and whispered in the young blonde's ear, she finally arrived at Naruto and gave him his form. The two of them then locked eyes. "Looking forward to seeing you later, my little minx." Naruto tried to retreat into himself after blushing angrily at that, and the other genin gazed at him with wide eyes, wondering what in the world had happened between them. When Naruto turned to face her, Sakura put a gentle hand on her teammate's shoulder and gazed into his eyes, noticing how silent he was. "Naruto-kun, what happened? Did she do something to you? You were never this quiet, or shy." After feigning a shy smile and shaking his head, the blonde filled out his form and stepped back a few paces. As this was going on, the other genin in the vicinity couldn't help but stare at Anko and experience a wave of overwhelming terror. What the devil was this crazy blonde genin really capable of, after all, if this proctor could tame her? A short while later, Sasuke demanded that Naruto give him the scroll as Team 7 stood outside the gate they were assigned. The blonde, strangely enough, complied without complaining. The Uchiha blinked in bewilderment at this, tucked the scroll away on his body, and stepped back as his pink-haired teammate stepped in front of Naruto and gave him a firm embrace. "Oh Naruto-kun, I'm so sorry. I should have been there for you. She did such horrible things to you, didn't she, Naruto-kun? I'm getting really scared when I see the doby like this. That woman must have done something bad to him. I'm going to run the hell away from him as soon as we get into the fucking forest if he doesn't get over this quickly." As he observed the blonde for any indications of recovery, Sasuke pondered. Naruto glanced at his two teammates and blinked a few times. "She didn't do anything. In fact, she was really, really nice. We had a nice conversation, but, yeah." Naruto blushed angrily, retreated inside himself, and started picking at his nose. The whiskered genin said to his teammates, "It's fine. Nothing happened, so, relax. I'm fine, see." He flexed his right arm and laughed to himself. Sakura nodded slowly, but neither she nor Sasuke found their teammates' remarks particularly compelling. They wouldn't question him, though. Regardless of Naruto's mental state, they would be fine as long as he was able to continue. The Uzumaki boy folded his arms across his chest and pouted when he realized they were still not persuaded. "It doesn't help that I couldn't maintain control. Hey, I'm telling you the truth, I'm fine. She didn't do anything, I'm just thinking about something she and I talked about. That's all it is." The first person to truly dominate me in that way is her. I was unable to prevail. Anko is a strong woman. After 1.5 hours, the Forest of Death. After easily locating and defeating another team, Team 7 swiftly obtained the necessary scroll. But they had to eat something because the forest was already growing darker. After determining that it would be wise to take a night's rest, the three of them located a remote location and made camp there. But soon after Team 7's 3 genin started getting ready, Naruto froze and started to cautiously scan his surroundings. Sakura asked him what he was doing, but the blonde just stood up and drew a kunai. "Something's coming, something strong, whatever it is coming fast." At this, Sasuke scowled and stood up as well. "And how do you know this, Dobi? I don't hear anything and I certainly don't see anything. So how could you possibly know something's coming?" After giving Sasuke a quick glance, the blonde shook his head. Naruto's eyes widened in horror as he knocked Sakura and Sasuke to the forest floor and screamed out as he was suddenly sent flying by a strong gust of wind. "I'm a sensor ninja. I didn't think you guys needed to know, but since you refuse to listen without knowing the truth, there it is." Sakura let out a scream as she saw her teammate vanish into the woods. She hurried to her feet and followed him as soon as the wind died down. Naruto-kun. But before she could run to Naruto's aid, Sasuke leapt to his feet and violently grabbed her wrist, causing her some discomfort. "Sasuke-kun, let me go. We need to help Naruto-kun." With a swift shake of his head, the raven-haired Uchiha turned to face their adversary. "We can't. I don't think we'd get very far. Naruki." When she finally stopped flying, Naruki moaned and did so with some force. The wind was knocked out of her as she fell on her butt after colliding with something. The young blonde stood up, glanced at what she had collided with, and blinked a few times. "Well, that's interesting." There was a rather large snake in front of her eyes. The blonde waved, smiling up at it as it got ready to devour her. "Hello Mr. Snaky Poo, what's your name?" "Sakura, Orochimaru," and Sasuke shortly after. It was a snake-like kunoichi, or what he believed to be a kunoichi, and Sasuke was in a panic, trying his hardest to hide himself and his pink-haired teammate from it. Earlier, he had used a Kaiden jutsu on the freak of nature, but it only seemed to melt off this person's face. The Uchiha knew for sure that something bad had happened, but he wasn't exactly sure what the hell had happened at that moment. He knew he and Sakura were going to die if they didn't leave right away because this person was way out of their league. Sakura's eyes grew wide, and she started yelling at Sasuke that a snake was approaching from behind. But the pinkett could only watch in horror as it drew closer and closer, her Crussian teammate's hand clasped so securely over her mouth. The strangest thing happened just as it was about to attack. It froze and spun around, taking a big tree limb to the face, which sent it flying from the tree and crashing into the forest floor below. Sakura and Sasuke looked to see where the tree limb had come from as Sasuke let her go. After being suffocated by Sasuke in this manner, the pinkett was now sucking in as much breath as she could. They couldn't believe their eyes when they saw what threw the homemade projectile weapon. Naruto-kun. When Sasuke Uchiha saw his blonde teammate, he exhaled with relief. Before he heard laughter coming from directly behind him, Sasuke confessed, "I have never been so relieved to see my insane teammate. He got here just in time. I thought we were done for." The Uchiha sprang forward with Sakura, spun quickly on his heel, and hurled a bunch of shuriken at his adversary. Sasuke looked around in fear once more as he saw his opponent turn to mud after being struck by the shuriken. "Damn it, where the hell are you?" On a different branch, the odd, snake-like man emerged, briefly observing the blonde Jinchuriki. "How curious. I would very much like to know how you tamed my dear snake Naruto-kun." As his new snake companion slithered closer to the group, Naruto laughed joyfully. "Yeehaw, this is awesome. Thanks for the ride Mr. Snakey Wakey." The blonde smiled at Orochimaru when it just stopped and looked back at its former master. I just have a way with animals. Like that bunny rabbit I took from Haku-kun on that mission. Whittle Cushy Wushy loves me. And now I have a bunch of new friends here in the forest. Including Snakey Wakey here. Orochimaru looked down at his snake, or what was once his snake, and his right eyebrow twitched dangerously. Then he saw something strange. Where the hell did you find reins for my snake? Naruto shrugged his shoulders and looked down at the snake, blinking. I dunno. I guess I just kinda did something I guess. I can't really remember, but at least it makes Snakey Wakey easier to ride. Now go get. I am boy. The snake Sanin attempted to command Snakey Wakey to return from its source as he charged forward to attack his former master, but for some reason, his command was unsuccessful. How is this even possible? You don't even hold the snake contract. The whiskered Jinchuriki started to pat Snakey Wakey's head while he laughed merrily to himself. Snakey Wakey's my new pet. You can't take him away just because you hold some kinda contract with him. Isn't that right, Mr. Snakey Wakey Cutie Wootie Patootie? The snake most likely would have sighed by now if it was capable of doing so. Rather, it turned to face its former master and spat out acrid venom in his direction. To escape his own summon of all things, Orochimaru had to jump from branch to branch. The fact that a contract literally materialized in the blonde brat's hands out of the blue only made matters worse for him. Don't you dare sign that. Naruto smiled and looked down at Snakey Wakey, blinking as he read the contract. Actually, the poor snake summon had no idea how the snake contract just happened to fall into Naruto's hands at random, but it did. Is this for me, Mr. Snakey Wakey? Thank you. Naruto bit his thumb and signed his name, or rather, her name, in blood before anyone could stop him. Yai, I'm a snake summoner now. Yippee gippy, we. Orochimaru was stunned by what had just happened and stood there with his mouth open and his eyes wide. He noticed that Sasuke and the Pinkett, his target, were accustomed to this erratic behavior and obviously had no idea how any of this had just happened as he looked over at them. Slumping shoulders, the snake Sanin nearly burst into tears. What the hell is going on? With another smirk, Naruto gestured directly at Orochimaru. Orochimaru's eyes widened at this, and he screamed out as he had to dodge a flurry of spikes being thrown from the back end of a gigantic spider. Okay, spiky spider, get him. The Sanin yelled angrily, what the hell is going on here? As he kept avoiding the snakes and the spider's attacks, Orochimaru inhaled deeply as he felt as though he had finally gotten a little respite, and then he heard a twig snap behind him. The cunning snake turned around shakily, only to be confronted by a massive boar. Son of a bitch. Only Sakura and Sasuke could observe as Naruki and her new pets managed to keep the snake-like man at bay. The Uchiha looked to his right, blinked a few times, and laughed a little uncomfortably. Do you have any idea what's going on right now? I sure as hell don't. Before grinning at her crush, the Pinkett gave a few left to right head shakes. The statement, all I know is I am really happy Naruto-kun appeared when he did. His insanity is really paying off this time, caused Sasuke to nod in agreement. By this time, Orochimaru was being pursued by more than a dozen animals, each of which was attacking him with a special attack. Even though the snake had injured the snake Sanin, it had only managed to graze the man's arm with some of its acid at one point, failing to do enough to seriously harm him. The Sanin started mentally going over his options as he ran, jumping around as necessary. Alright, I obviously underestimated this insane jerk. I cannot accept the fact that I will eventually be caught if this continues. I could immediately put an end to the jerk if I could just get to him and apply that sealing technique. But it's not possible in this case. Hold on. After giving the Uchiha a quick glance, the snake Sanin smiled and made up his mind. He quickly executed a few hand seals before allowing a rather large tiger to strike him. The real Orochimaru suddenly materialized behind Sasuke and bit into his neck as the man's body turned to mud. He turned to Sakura and started talking as soon as he had applied the curse mark to the Uchiha and knocked him out. When Sasuke-kun awakens, inform him that if he wants real power. Orochimaru had been tackled by an enormous bear, which sent him hurtling through 3 trees before he collapsed on the ground. The bear roared to demonstrate its power as it gazed down at the snake Sanin and saw him retreat. After growling at this, it quickly turned to face Naruto and waited for more instructions. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura landed on the tree limb after jumping off Snakey Wakey's head. He frowned and tipped his head, looking down at the boy. Sakura, who was shocked by what had happened and how composed Naruto appeared to be, just nodded. Well, that certainly doesn't look good. We should probably get somewhere safe so he can rest. My friends and I can keep watch. The Pinkett said, looking down into her crush's face and worried for him. Orochimaru. At the moment, the snake Sannin was attempting to escape the forest of death. His right leg was currently practically useless, and his left arm was drooping at his side. He had to get some damn medical help and find Kabuto immediately. I swear I'll kill that fucking kid the next time I see him. Naruto Uzumaki, I'll remember this. The snake Sannin had to quickly avoid a Kaiden jutsu. He looked wearily at one Anko Mitarashi as he landed on one leg on a higher tree limb. He shook his head and sighed. Anko-chan, I expected you to show up at some point. Do tell me, how is that curse mark of yours doing, Unconsciously, Anko rubbed at her mark until she became aware of something. What the hell? That's a first. I'm not used to seeing you so beat up. At this, Orochimaru frowned and gave Anko a hateful look. If you see Naruto Uzumaki, tell that little shit that I'll be coming for him later. I won't accept this humiliation. Anko actually doubled over from the pain of laughing so hard at this point. The snake mistress of Konoha shook her head and glanced at her former master as she began to relax. Wow, I didn't think the Gaki could kick your ass. Tell me, how'd he do it? Orochimaru scowled and averted his gaze before forming a hand seal with his right hand. The snake Sannin grinned as he heard Anko scream and dropped to her knees. The slippery snake shook his head in dismay as he looked down on her. Go ahead and try to laugh now, Anko-chan. TCH. Normally I'd love to play with you a bit more before I resorted to something like this, but I'm neither in the condition nor in the mood to screw around right now. The Sannin ignored his own pain and smirked at her as he hopped down to where Anko was kneeling in agony. I have a message I need delivered for me, Anko-chan. Tell your dear Hokage that he'd best keep these Chunin exams going if he doesn't want to see his village destroyed. I will see it burn to the ground and its people tortured mercilessly should he even attempt to shut these exams down. Is this understood? Anko gave Orochimaru a fierce snarl and tried to spit in her face, but he backhanded her and knocked her face down before she could. Deliver the message, or I'll go back, hunt that little shit down, and kill him. Do you understand me now, Anko? Despite her wince, the purple-haired woman nodded slowly. Just before the Sandaime Hokage and some Anbu showed up in the area, she saw the man vanish. Naruki-chan, I hope all is well with you. Morning of the following day. Sitting at the entrance to the tiny hollow, Naruki reflected on the events of the previous evening. The fact that Sasuke merely gave her one of their scrolls in that manner infuriated her. If he hadn't been such a moron, they could have gone straight to the tower today instead of having to get another scroll. The crazy blonde sighed to herself as she gazed out into the clearing. Listen, all of you. I know you're out there, so why don't you just come on out and I might take it easy on you. I'm kind of in a bad mood. Naruki soon noticed a squirrel approaching and was unable to ignore the clear trap. She sighed, directed a small amount of wind-natured chakra into her index finger, and swung it upward at the squirrel. The rodent scurried away in panic as the explosive tag was ripped to pieces. Poor Squirrel-chan, whoever did that to you is going to pay dearly for trying to use such a cute little animal as an explosive. The Oto Genin scowled at each other just out of sight. The team's female member spoke first. What do we do now, Dosu? Isn't that crazy blonde? I'd rather not fight that thing head on. The boy with the spiky hair shook his head and grinned. You're such a scaredy cat, Kin. Just watch, Dosu and I will kick that little punk's ass. You can handle the pink bitch if she comes out. She's easy pickings for the three of us anyways. The spiky-haired boy emerged from hiding and aimed his palms at the crazy blonde before the mummy-like boy could stop him. The poor boy was soon deafened when some strange force of wind sent his sound waves straight back at him. Naruto flashed into Dosu's face and smiled as Zaku let out a painful scream. Hey, I'll take that gauntlet now, Mummy-kun. The mummy-like boy screamed, leapt back, and tried to attack the blonde with his gauntlet, but failed and vanished from sight. Shit, where are you? Standing behind Kin, Naruto Uzumaki started stroking her hair with his fingers. Kin spun around and tried to hit Naruto with her senbon, but the boy exploded in a cloud of smoke. You take pretty good care of your hair, Kain. That is your name, right? I heard Mr. Stupid over there say it a moment ago. The blonde smirked and pointed to the girl with the black hair, laughing to himself. That wasn't very nice. I'm just trying to be friendly, Kin-chan. Get her Borsi. The big boar from the day before charged and slammed into her before Kin could even scream, sending the girl crashing into a nearby tree. When Zaku finally came to, he glared at the insane Naruto Uzumaki as the girl fell to the ground, clearly unconscious from such a severe blow. I'll kill you. You psychotic, insane bastard. Zankakyokua, extreme decapitating airwaves. Naruto cocked his head slightly to the side as Zaku's attack started to level the ground, then swiftly flashed through some hand seals and yelled out the name of his own jutsu. Futon. Toryoseru K's Cabe, wind release, overpowering wall of wind. Naruto exhaled sharply before letting it loose and seeing Zaku Abumi's sound-based attack be thwarted by his wall of wind. The blonde genin gave the boy across from him a sly smile after the two attacks eventually neutralized one another. It was already too late when Zaku heard Dosu shouting at him, "Bye-bye Mr. Stupid." The boy was hit by a strong backhand and sent flying before he could even turn to face the cage bunchen behind him. He also hit a tree and collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Dosu jumped out and squatted down, putting his team's scroll on the ground at Naruto's feet, realizing that there was probably only one way to avoid being crushed like his teammates. Dosu winced a little and made the decision to ask, here. This is our scroll, you're welcome to have it. Just please let us leave in peace. After noticing the disillusioned expression in the crazy blonde's eyes. What's wrong? Naruto smiled and gestured down at the mummy boy's arm. Gimme your gauntlet too and you have a deal, mummy boy. Dosu frowned as his eye grew wide and he turned to face his weapon, his gauntlet. Damn it, fine, the boy said, taking it off, setting that down on the floor as well, and getting ready to go. That is, until the tree's interior began to emit a very sinister power. Shit, what is it now? Sasuke Uchiha was in front of Dosu before anyone could intervene, backhanding him across the face and sending the poor, helpless boy hurtling into a nearby tree. Sasuke, clearly wanting to kill someone, ran towards the young man as he tried to stand. Fearing for his life, Dosu started begging the Uchiha to simply let him and his teammates leave. Naruto got ready to move because he knew Sasuke wouldn't stop, but two other teams arrived and restrained him instead. Shikamaru looked over his shoulder and gave the blonde genin a sly smile. We were watching that fight, you know. It's troublesome, but you're much stronger than anticipated, Naruto. Go ahead and take the scroll and your new toy, and rest. We'll hold Sasuke until he calms down. Tenten nodded her head in the direction of his teammates while glancing at the injured Dosu. Hurry up, take your teammates and go. You've already lost, so you're out of the competition. Get out of here and get the medical attention you need at the exit. After expressing his gratitude to teams 9 and 10, Dosu hurried to his fallen teammates, took one in each arm, and leapt as fast as he could. Lee turned to his friend with the blonde hair and smiled as soon as they were gone. That was a most youthful fight, Naruto-kun. I am impressed. I hope we can fight each other in the next stage, my friend. Sakura staggered out of hollow, and Naruto laughed and slowly nodded his head. It appeared that Sasuke had hurt her while trying to reach the enemy. After glancing at everyone, she cast a sorrowful glance at the ground. I tried to stop Sasuke-kun. I really did, but... Naruto and Ino hurried to her side and started examining her wound. Naruto glanced back at his male teammate and narrowed his eyes, muttering curses. He broke your arm, Sakura-chan. The girl who was with them, a platinum blonde, nodded and started to look around. With that, Ino started running around the area looking for something useful. The best we can do for you right now is make a sling. You shouldn't try to move your arm for a while, Sakura-chan. Give me a minute and I'll be back with something we can use. Choji, meanwhile, slugged the Uchiha as hard as he could and sent him crashing to the ground after growing weary of Sasuke's struggles against Shikamaru's Kajimane no Jutsu, shadow imitation technique. Damn it, Sasuke, snap out of it already. The marked Uchiha initially gave everyone a glare, but after a short while the curse mark started to fade, he fell to the ground and started to breathe heavily. When the 5 people around him finally let him go, they watched as he slowly got up and glanced at everyone before settling his eyes on a furiously irate Naruto. Is Sakura okay? The whiskered Jinchuriki shook his head and stepped in front of Sakura to keep the boy with the raven hair away from her. You broke her arm. The answer is no, Sasuke, she is most definitely not okay. And the scroll Dosu mummy gave us is another damn earth scroll, so we still have to find a heaven scroll before we can go to the tower and get her some fucking help. With Tenten and Lee's assistance, Ino hurried up to the Pinkett as she was about to speak and started to tend to her. Shikamaru approached his blonde friend and extended his hand, palm up, before anyone could respond. If you don't need that second Earth Scroll, could we perhaps have it instead? We are in need of one. Naruto Uzumaki sighed in response, gave a slow nod, and then handed his friend the extra Earth Scroll. Thanks for your help, guys. As soon as Ino has finished tending to Sakura-chan, you guys should get to the tower. You'll be safest there. It's pretty dangerous out here in the forest. Sasuke glared at his teammate while firmly grasping his arm. Damn it, Dobi, what the hell are you doing? Don't just go handing over one of our scrolls. They're the enemy. Naruto, by this point weary of Sasuke, let out a deep sigh before his fist abruptly and forcefully struck the Uchiha's face. The Uchiha screamed in agony, fell to his knees, and clutched his bleeding nose as everyone in the vicinity heard the bones in his nose break. That's what I think of your complaints, Tem. Either shut the fuck up or I can start breaking other, more vital parts of your body. It's your choice. At this, Shikamaru and Choji grinned. The plump boy smiled and reached over to give Naruto a shoulder pat. Thanks for that, Naruto, you're a good guy. We'll take good care of the scroll. The Nara nodded slowly after meeting Naruto's eyes. The brown-haired boy sighed, turned to face the Yamanaka on his team, and muttered, troublesome, once more before leaving with Choji. If we get to see Hokage-sama, we'll also tell him about the situation. This situation is troublesome, but it seems like something he should know. Since you're finished now, Ino, we should get going. After scowling at this, Ino nodded her head and gave Sakura a tender embrace, taking care not to rub her injured arm too much. When her best friend nodded, the young Yamanaka girl rushed after her teammates, saying, "Be safe, Sakura. We'll see you in the next stage of the exams, okay? Even if it comes from Sasuke-kun, please protect her, Naruto-kun." Before glaring at the members of Team 7, Neji glanced at his teammates. After saying, "We'll be taking our leave now. If fate decrees it, we will meet in the next stage. Farewell." Team 9 also left, leaving the 3 members of Team 7 by themselves in the clearing, with Naruki's numerous strange pets nearby keeping watch over them. With another heavy sigh, Naruto glanced down at his hands for a moment before hurriedly beckoning Katsuo and Chikao to join him. He gave Katsuo a gentle smile. The blonde then took out his team's scroll and said, please let me know right away. Oh, before I forget, if you happen to get a closer look at the scroll, it needs to have the symbol for heaven on it. It's different from this one. Katsuo, can you please carry Sakura-chan? She's been injured, and considering she's twisted her ankle as well, he said, nodding and giving his pink-haired teammate a knowing look. It's best that she not walk for a while. Nodding, the monkey summon briefly embraced his summoner's neck before jumping into the trees to find some fresh victims for good Naruto. Sakura was raised into Katsuo's arms as he glanced down at his summoner. We should move from this location, Naruto-kun. The commotion from your battle will likely attract any teams that are nearby, and you 3 need your rest for now. Naruto and Sasuke nodded in agreement and then set off with Katsuo and the other animals to find a new place to rest. Chikao, please hurry. I'm relying on you to locate someone who has the appropriate scroll. Later in the afternoon, Chikao returned to Naruto and told him about a lone girl holding a scroll after discovering a new resting place hidden between 2 rather large trees. He summoned the blonde to go see which scroll this girl happened to have, and she blinked at the thought of such a thing and jumped off. He saw the girl a while later and nearly burst out laughing when he saw that she was being pursued by a big bear. The young blonde jumped down in front of it, reached up, and gave the bear a pat on the chest, which caused a small amount of chakra to flow through its body. Before long, it fell and was contentedly sleeping on the ground. There we go, that takes care of that. Now. The blonde turned and looked at the girl, assessing her appearance. Her brown-rimmed glasses and gorgeous red hair only served to highlight her stunning crimson eyes. Well, aren't you a looker? Are you okay, miss? With a faint smile on her lips, the redhead blushed slightly and slowly reached out to shake her savior's hand. Karen. My name is Karen. Thank you very much for helping me. In response, Naruto Uzumaki nodded and smiled. The blonde chose to point to Karen's scroll and say, hey, it's what I do, Karen-chan. The name's Naruto Uzumaki, it's good to meet ya. New, which scroll do you have? I'm kinda in need of a heaven scroll. One of my teammates has a broken arm thanks to an accident, and I'm desperate to get this stage of the exam over with so I can get her the help she needs. Karen's thoughts were racing. Uzumaki. Did I just hear that correctly? It can't be. Then she remembered his question. The redhead shook her head, looked down at the scroll she was carrying, and blinked a few times. No, I'm sorry, it's an Earth scroll. I'm trying to get a Heaven scroll too. But, the young redhead chose to offer her assistance, grinning at the boy in front of her. I'm a medic of sorts. If you take me to your friend, I might be able to help her. Please, I promise I won't do anything, I just want to help. Naruto took both of her hands in his and grinned. When the girl nodded, Naruto swiftly gathered her in his arms and started to jump off with her back to Team 7's makeshift camp location. Yes, please, let's go. She's in a lot of pain. Karen's close contact with her fellow Uzumaki caused her to blush throughout the entire event. He is quite audacious, isn't he? The camp of Team 7. Karen scowled as she examined Sakura's fractured arm. Sakura turned to her teammates and said, "This really looks very bad. But, I have a way to fix it if you're willing to hear me out." Before nodding and staring into the girl's crimson eyes, "I have a strange healing ability. If you bite into my arm and absorb some of my chakra, you'll be healed in no time. I know it sounds strange, but please, trust me." At this, Naruto raised an eyebrow, but Sasuke just gave him a doubtful expression. Sakura, however, glanced once more among her teammates before giving Karen a nod. Sakura leaned forward and bit into the girl's arms as she rolled up her sleeves. "I sincerely hope it works, but this is really strange. She appears to be trusted by Naruto-kun, so..." When the healing process started, Team 7 was taken aback. Sakura was actually returning to normal thanks to Karen's chakra. When the Pinket's arm was completely healed, she cautiously took it out of the makeshift sling and moved it around, afraid that too much movement would cause pain. She turned to Karen and gave her a strong hug when she was completely pain-free. "Thank you so much, Karen-chan. I'm glad we met you." After giving Sakura a gentle back pat and grinning, Karen turned to face Naruto and grinned at him. Karen smiled at the Pinket and bowed her head before approaching Naruto and nodding her head in agreement. "I'm here now because of Naruto-kun. He saved me, so it's only right that I repay him however I can. I'm just happy that I could be of help." Leaning in close, the girl kissed the whiskered blonde's cheek and hurried away, holding her scroll tightly to her chest. "Thank you for your help, Naruto-kun. Good luck, and take care, okay," she said. Naruto reached up and touched his cheek, blinking at this. "I seriously doubt that these people would act in such a manner if they truly knew that I am a girl." Naruto chuckled to himself at that idea, then turned to face his teammates and let out a quiet sigh. "Chikao will continue looking for other teams, but I have a feeling we won't be finding anything tonight. So let's eat and get some rest. We'll continue our search in the morning." "Sound good." After exchanging nods, Sakura and Sasuke started searching through their packs for their rations. There wasn't much left, but it would last them through tonight. They would then have to go fishing or hunting to get more food. Sakura found herself frowning as she glanced at her teammate with the blonde hair. "Naruto-kun, it looks like that Karen girl is interested in you. I had the impression that it was likely more than just the fact that you saved her. Perhaps I'm just dreaming." Central Tower 2 days later. Team 7 had acquired the necessary scroll by midday on the 4th day and had reached the tower within an hour. Once he arrived, of course, Naruto and Sakura had told their sensei, Kakashi Hatake, about the strange mark on Sasuke's neck after talking to Iruka. For the remainder of that day, they didn't see Sasuke. When he reached the tower, Naruki had gone off with Haku. The blonde had told Haku about Anko Mitarashi and her intention to woo her into the relationship, and they simply enjoyed each other's company. The young man was initially apprehensive, but after a lengthy conversation with his girlfriend, he started to laugh and gradually came to accept it. The young man was actually a little taken aback by this fact, but he had no intention of complaining. After all, Haku had already accepted that Naruki could occasionally be rather odd, and he understood that this was simply the way she was utterly unpredictable. Unfortunately, since Naruki had reached the tower, they had not yet seen Anko in person. The blonde was extremely alarmed by this fact, and Haku found it extremely challenging to reassure her. It was made all the more difficult by the fact that they both felt something had happened. "I'm sure Anko-san will be fine, Naruki-chan. So we didn't get to meet when you wanted us to. We'll get to meet each other soon enough, I'm positive of it. So let's be patient, okay sweetheart?" The ice user finally said, nodding his head and giving his girlfriend a tight hug. The blonde became much calmer as a result, and she immediately agreed. But right away, to her boyfriend's surprise and delight, she started attempting to tickle him. Unfortunately, they were unable to do anything too personal. Naruki was frustrated because she had wanted to be close to her boyfriend in her true gender and maybe even get a little frisky, but she couldn't do that at the moment because she didn't have the privacy required for it. Therefore, when Naruki was in her male identity as Naruto, the two of them had to make do with their regular activities when they were out in public. Naruki once smiled broadly as she showed her boyfriend the gauntlet she had stolen from Dosu. Examining it, Haku laughed uneasily and noted that his girlfriend couldn't use it properly because it was a bit too large. The Jinchuriki simply shrugged her shoulders and clarified that she intended to either have it renovated so she could use it herself or keep it as a trophy. Haku understood her strategy, persuaded Naruki to choose the second course of action, and then, as he so frequently enjoyed, he kissed his girlfriend. Not much happened aside from these few activities. Sakura was allowed to take part in the next round of exams without any problems after being examined by some medic nin, who concluded that her arm had healed enough that it wouldn't have an impact on her ability to fight. She had hurried to find Naruto after hearing the wonderful news. When she finally located him, she gave her friend a big hug and a glomp. A part of the Pinkett was scared to approach Sasuke right now, but she would have told him the news. The 5th day was now coming to an end, and every passing team was gathered in a big room. Above them, lining the space, were their senseis. Along with the Sandaime Hokage, a few Anbu, and other people Naruto didn't fully recognize, the proctors for the first and second exams were also up there. He did recognize Haku, Zabuza, and Yugao, who had apparently made the decision to come see him kick butt in whatever stage came next. The young blonde gave his family a brief wave and smiled before he looked at Anko. Since their last encounter, she had clearly experienced some sort of trauma, as evidenced by her poor appearance. Nevertheless, Naruto grinned when Anko turned to face him and expressed his happiness that the snake mistress was safe. The blonde couldn't control the smile that came over his face as Anko grinned at him. Hiruzen Sarutobi eventually broke the silence to congratulate the genin on passing the second exam stage. Then Naruto saw Hayate, the man, leap down and start speaking. He was apparently the next proctor, and before they could start the third exam stage, a few preparatory rounds would need to be conducted. Naruto was excited by this fact rather than bothered by it. He would get to fight more, after all. The fact that the four-eyed guy with the cards dropped out was what Naruto found bothersome. He didn't appear particularly worn out. Rather, it appeared that Kabuto could kick someone's ass with ease if he so desired. The young blonde shrugged that off his mind and turned to his Jiji. Naruto listened to Hiruzen Sarutobi's next words with a smile on his face. Let the preliminary rounds. The Sandaime Hokage then turned to face the genin and smiled alongside them. Begin. When Naruto realized he wouldn't be the first to fight, he pouted. As usual, Sasuke was granted that privilege instead. It appeared that Kakashi-sensei did not want the Uchiha to use that curse mark thingy when he faced one of Kabuto's teammates. Knowing Sasuke, he would use whatever power he desired, but it was probably for the best. Naruto, however, was aware that he would follow Kakashi's instructions and limit himself to using only taijutsu for this battle unless using ninjutsu or genjutsu was absolutely required to win, since her teammate didn't want to be eliminated from the competition. It appears that Kakashi didn't want to take any chances with the curse mark just yet, even though it had been sealed. Naruto reasoned that he could likely manage the removal of such a thing given enough time if he dabbled in the art of fuinjutsu, but the question was whether Sasuke would allow it. It didn't matter, The fact that Sasuke was getting kicked in the butt down there was what mattered. The youthful, blonde shinobi frowned at this and considered making fun of his teammate to see if it would help him get his act together, but changed his mind. It would be Sasuke's fault if he lost this match. Helping the pampered runt of the Uchiha clan advance to the final round was not something Naruto was interested in doing. But there was undoubtedly something odd happening all around him. He expected Sakura and Ino to cheer for him, but they weren't. He could tell by looking at them both that they were eagerly following the game, but they also appeared reluctant to support him. While Ino continued to cast worried glances at her pink-haired friend, Sakura was massaging the spot where Sasuke had injured her. Naruto nodded his head slowly as comprehension came to him. Sasuke appears to have strained his relationship with these two to the point where their crushes on him may never be the same. They had started to doubt whether they really wanted to be with a man like him and whether they still felt the same way about him. Sasuke was not yet a man, Naruto thought. Sasuke was a terrible, pampered youngster. He was still too young to be regarded by anyone as a man. Naruto reached over and put a gentle hand on his teammate's shoulder, then watched as she turned to face him. In an attempt to console his friend, the blonde put an arm around her waist and drew her close. Sakura closed her eyes and rested her head on Naruto's shoulder, content to smile broadly and enjoy his warmth. She whispered, "Thank you, Naruto," so that only he could hear. Naruto returned the favor by saying, "You're welcome, Sakura-chan. You're my friend. I'd do anything to help you." As Sakura took in her friend's words, she blushed and gave a slight nod. Her thoughts kept wandering even though she knew Naruto didn't mean anything in that sense. After all, her friend was a handsome man who was also incredibly kind and considerate. He was difficult to dislike. She would kiss him right now if he wasn't already seeing Haku. Then again, perhaps they wouldn't mind, Sakura thought. Sakura then turned to face her teammate, leaned in, and planted a chaste kiss on his lips. Everyone who was observing them was taken aback by this action, which diverted their attention from the battle below. Ino was swooning over how adorable they were together, Kakashi was giggling in a strange way, Anko was grinning, and Haku was in disbelief. But what about Zabuza? He did not know how to react. Here was another girl kissing his adopted daughter. It was kind of hot on the one hand, but because Naruki was already seeing Haku, it was really awkward on the other. However, it might have been an open relationship. Who the hell knows? He certainly did not, and he liked it that way. Sakura, on the other hand, drew back, her eyes closed, a calm smile on her face, while Naruki gaped at her. Sakura-chan. What was that for? She stumbled out, barely able to process the fact that she had just been kissed by her teammate and dear friend. Gazing into her friend's eyes, Sakura flushed. "You've been a really great friend to me, Naruto-kun. You've done so much for me and, well, after everything that's happened, I just couldn't help myself. And in the forest, after Karen helped me and seeing how she looked at you and everything, I have to admit I was a little jealous. I know you're with Haku, but maybe you too would consider, I dunno, sharing," she responded, blushing so badly that her face and neck were the color of tomatoes. Naruki was compelled to nod slowly in comprehension. "I see. I like you, Sakura-chan. You're a very good friend and I care about you a lot. Can I have time to think about this? I'll talk with Haku-kun, okay? And there's something about me that you kinda need to know about before we can even enter a relationship together. It might make you seriously rethink your decision to be with me," the disguised Naruki said as she rubbed the back of her head unconsciously. Sakura nodded her head slowly, blinking in bewilderment. "I see. I doubt that whatever secret you have is that bad, Naruto-kun. But, whatever it is, I'm sure that I'll still like you just the same. After all, haven't you heard the saying? The heart wants what the heart wants." Naruki laughed. "You have a good point, Sakura-chan. Okay, I'll talk with Haku-kun then and we'll see about getting some time alone with Gramps, Hokage-sama together so we can talk, okay? Because my secret is big. I kinda need Gramps' permission before I can tell anyone about my secret." "Well, secrets." Sakura gave a sympathetic nod. She understood what her friend was trying to say, but she didn't know what kind of secrets could be so large. In order to simply hold Naruto close, she leaned in and planted another gentle kiss on his lips before leaning back and resting her head against his chest. As he slowly encircled Sakura with his arms, Naruto turned to face the Sandaime Hokage, Haku, Zabuza, and Yugao, who were all observing him from various angles. Some with curious or intrigued expressions, others with amused ones. Naruto was pleased when the Hokage nodded in agreement and agreed that they could set up a meeting after he mouthed to him that they needed to speak later. Each of Haku, Zabuza, and Yugao approached him, and Haku made the decision to question Sakura. He laughed and asked, being careful not to give away Naruki's secret, "So, how long have you been interested in my Naruto-kun, Sakura turned red and avoided looking into Haku's eyes. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. It just kind of happened at some point along the way. I think the beginning of it started during the Wave mission, but I think what happened in the Forest of Death is when I really began to realize that I was falling for Naruto-kun," she said. Is that wrong?" Haku shook his head and sighed. "No, that's not wrong. I just wasn't expecting for someone else to fall for him like that. You see, he's already invited Anko into our relationship, so I was trying to get used to the idea of another person joining us. And now, well, there's you. I was just wondering how it started is all. He continued with a sigh. I guess I'm really going to have to get used to the idea of sharing my Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled as he glomped onto Haku. Ah, you'll love it Haku-kun. Just imagine the kinky stuff we can try out, he said, whispering in Haku's ear while he leaned tightly. You know, me riding you while you eat out Anko-chan. The two of us making out while we're riding you. Then there's the sex in the shower, naked aprons so you take us in the kitchen, sex in public places where we run the risk of being caught. Naruto roared with laughter and pounded his fist in the air as Haku passed out from the deluge of images, shocking everyone in the room with the words, "Muahahahahahahaha." Naruto strikes again. I have turned my boyfriend into a pile of goop on the floor. Sasuke then punched Yoroyakado in the neck with such force that the man staggered backwards, clutching at his throat as he struggled to breathe. Everyone blinked and turned to face the arena floor when he passed out on the ground and collapsed, and when Hayate declared Sasuke the winner, they saw Sasuke also collapse, no longer able to stand. Unable to comprehend why he had only just won the battle, Naruto questioned, wonder what took the Tem so long to finish that fight. Zabuza shook his head and sighed. He replied to his adopted daughter, probably because he's a pathetic little runt. As Yugao and her roommate watched Sasuke being carried away, Yugao nodded in agreement, but Sasuke snarled at Zabuza in disdain. When Zabuza simply waved the Uchiha away with a smile on his face, she couldn't help but laugh. Kakashi grimaced and sighed to himself. I never said he couldn't use ninjutsu or genjutsu. I just said to be careful when using them so he didn't pull on that tainted chakra source. I know how he is, he craves power. He'd use that damn thing in a heartbeat. I swear Sasuke is a damn moron, he murmured. This was when the next two fighters were shown on the board. Curiously examining it, Naruto saw that he had once more been passed over. She waited impatiently for her turn, pouting as she glanced at the names that were revealed and then down at the arena floor. Gaara against Shino Aburame. Naruto scowled at this matchup for a moment before yelling at Gaara. Oh Gaara-kun. Noticing that his new pal was paying attention, Naruto kept going. I know you're into the whole blood. Give me your blood thing, but I wanted to tell you not to go killing my friend down there. Okay, pretty please don't do anything bad. I'll give you a great big hug if you don't maim him in any way. You'll be my bestest buddy for life. Sound good? I bet it does, he grinned. Gaara accepted Naruto's deal by slowly nodding and blinking in astonishment. It was interesting in its own right, and he kind of liked the personality of this odd individual in spite of everything. Additionally, they somewhat balanced each other out because he was also insane in his own way. Before turning to face his opponent, the redhead nodded once more and looked into Naruto's eyes, giving him a slight but sincere smile. Kankuro and Temari were both in disbelief. For the promise of an embrace, of all things, that odd individual from before the exams began had just persuaded their brother not to kill or maim his opponent. What on earth was this individual? Baki's situation wasn't much better. He was worried that one of Konoha's ninja was becoming too close to their invasion's secret weapon, and he probably wouldn't risk breaking that bond in return for attacking the village. Oh no. It was unavoidable for the Sandaime Hokage. He burst out laughing. At first, it was modest, but eventually, he burst out laughing and tears were streaming down his face. When Naruki felt like it, she was hilarious. When he was finally done, he nodded down at Hayate and wiped the tears from his face. As Shino initiated the match by launching his Kikaichu beetles to test Gaara's sand defenses, the proctor nodded in agreement and jumped back. The others followed orders to flee back to Shino, but Gaara's sand rose up to protect him, easily catching and crushing the Kikaichu that came too close. Shino frowned at this and thought about sending them underground to burrow directly beneath Gaara, but he reasoned that Gaara would probably be able to defend against that as well. It was worth a shot, though. Therefore, Shino was surreptitiously sending a sizable swarm of Kikaichu underground, even though it appeared that he was only sending out another swarm to try and probe Gaara's defenses in the sides and back. He eventually drew back the Kikaichu he had launched above ground and watched as it materialized directly beneath Gaara. Gaara's eyes widened at this, and all he could do was watch as they started to swarm over him, gradually eroding his sand armor. But when they started eating away at his chakra, he flared the chakra of his Biju and saw the Kikaichu fall to the ground lifeless, unable to withstand the chakra's corrosive nature. Gaara's eyes narrowed into a ferocious glare as he focused on Shino and was ready to crush him no matter what he had promised his friend. But his opponent raised his hand and forfeited the match before he could. Shino decided to withdraw in order to save his hive more than himself, saying, "Proctor, I forfeit. I cannot penetrate his defenses by normal means and my Kikaichu cannot feed on his chakra. Therefore, it is not wise for me to continue this battle." Gaara-san wins. Even though he had just appeared bloodthirsty, Gaara blinked at this and cocked his head in a way that some of the girls thought was just too cute. Regardless of what other people might think, Naruki thought he looked cute. Gaara was about to approach the balcony after the match was declared won, but he was taken aback when Naruto jumped over the railing and glomped him. He pulled out a microphone and a recorder out of thin air and said, "Congrats on winning your match, Mr. Huggable Person of Doomy Woomy. How's it feel to be one step closer to ultimate victory in the Chunin exams?" Unable to understand what the devil was happening, the redhead blinked once more. Nevertheless, he felt more confident with each sentence as he realized he had to speak up. It feels good. I'm looking forward to facing you in the finals, Naruto-san. You are the only worthy opponent for me after all." On the spot, Naruto blushed and almost swooned. Naruto squirmed slightly where he was standing, slipped the recorder and microphone away, and then gave Gaara a tight hug while laughing. "Ah, you're such a sweetie pie. Don't worry, I'll make sure to win my match and we can have that fight you want in the finals. We'll make it a grand fight that everyone is sure to enjoy. And if you really want to, I can try to make the sky rain blood for you on that day. I'm not really sure how to make that possible, but I can try. Gotta make your mother happy sometimes after all, right?" Gaara returned his friend's hug with a smile. He said earnestly, "That sounds nice. I think I would like that." They then walked hand in hand up to the balcony, where everyone gave them a wide berth, obviously apprehensive of the two crazy people. Naruki said goodbye to her friend and then turned to smile at her friends and family after watching him return to his team. She smiled afterward and remarked, "Well, that was fun." Gazing at the board, she questioned, "So, who's next?" "Masumi Tsurugi versus Kankuro." "Ah, boring," whimpered Naruto. He pointed to the man wearing the clown suit and said, "I already know who wins this one." Sakura gave a blink. "Wait, how do you know that, Naruto-kun?" Naruto gave a shrug. "I dunno. Just do. I mean, it's pretty obvious. That and this fight's happened like a bunch of times by now," he replied. Unable to understand what Naruto was discussing, Kakashi and the others in the vicinity blinked. Mind explaining that, Naruto-kun?" Naruto shrugged and sagged against the railing, letting out a sigh. "It happened in the manga and the anime, and it's happened in so many fanfiction, including the author's other fanfictions, it's like there's no darn creativity anymore. I mean, come on, there's gotta be other matchups we could go with. Like Kankuro versus a giant man-eating bunny rabbit that falls through the ceiling and shouts out, 'Roar! I will eat you!'" Everyone in the room screamed in horror as Masumi's body started to flex and contort before exploding and turning into a massive tentacled monster that started to flail violently. "See, like that," Naruto exclaimed with delight as she saw Kankuro trying to defeat the monster. "Caution! Ahead! Tentacle rape! Caution!" The tentacle monster struggled for a while before catching hold of Kankuro and tearing off his pants as one of its tentacles edged closer and closer to its target. Kankuro turned pale and screamed in terror. He cried out, "Oh Kami, no. Not that. Anything but that. Oh Kami, someone save me," as the tentacle vanished into the darkness. The poor young man's condition was viewed with utter horror by everyone. Naruto eventually felt sorry for the poor man, and before the tentacle beast could finish, she drew the powerful sword Excalibur and killed it with a single blow. "Now it's over. Observe, there is nothing to fear." Kankuro collapsed to the ground and rolled into a fetal position, tears streaming down his face. "I can never get married now. I've been defiled." Naruki approached Kankuro, bent down, and assisted him in getting to his knees. "Please pull your pants up," she said, looking down at him. When he did, she smiled and performed the knighting ritual for laughs. "I hereby dub thee, Sir Goofy Pants III. You may rise, my funny knight." With a horrified expression on his face, Kankuro turned to face Naruto before getting up, grabbing his shoulders, and shaking him like a rag doll. "I was just tentacle raped and you're treating this like a joke. The fuck's wrong with you? Wait, is that the fucking Excalibur? Where the fuck do you get Excalibur? Naruto shrugged his shoulders and looked down at the blade, blinking. I dunno, I just pulled it out of nowhere and used it to kill the tentacle monster. Kinda like how I got the summoning contract for the snakes. I just do things sometimes and it works out. He replied with a second shoulder shrug. After blinking in disbelief, Kankuro had a thought. He whispered, do you think you could make my crush's panty drawer appear? At this, Naruto shook his head and blinked. It doesn't work like that. I just pull out random shit at random times. I can't just pull specific things out whenever I want. If I could, I'd probably have a whole mountain of things at home that I've wanted ever since I was just a young kid. He clarified. At this, the Suna Genin scowled and gave a head nod. After saying, yeah, I kinda figured as much. Ah well, it was worth a try. Thanks anyways. He started to leave, his experience with the tentacle monster that was once Masumi Tsurugi causing a noticeable limp in his step. Naruki returned to her team's side and sheathed Excalibur while grinning at them. Well, that was fun. I guess the author listened and decided to really fuck with us after all. I wonder what's next, she exclaimed with excitement. Yugao replied, I hope it's nothing as frightening as that damn thing. Poor Kankuro. Ino Yamanaka vs. Sakura Haruno. With a sigh, Naruto shook her head. She exclaimed, damn random number generator. The author complained, stupid author. She made the decision to clarify after noticing that everyone else was staring at her in complete bewilderment. The author assigned numbers to the remaining competitors, excluding a select few, and used a random number generator, or RNG for short, to determine the next matchup. And what should happen? Yet another fight we've seen repeated time and time again, even in the author's other fanfictions. I suppose he's not entirely to blame this time, but still. Kakashi shook his head and nodded in comprehension. I see. Regardless, good luck down there Sakura and do your best. Even if you don't win, just know that I'm proud of you, alright? Sakura nodded her head, grinned, and hurried down the stairs to prepare for her battle. They exchanged glances for a few seconds before smiles appeared on their faces as Ino arrived a short while later. Ino said with a slight smirk, so, Naruto, have to say, I didn't see that one coming. Still though, as long as you're happy. Sakura immediately flushed and shifted a little. Why yeah, well, you know, the girl with the pink hair said, grinning silly. He's sweet, and he's a really great guy. I'm sure if you had ended up on a team with him instead of me, you'd feel the same way I do Ino, said Sakura. As her gaze strayed to Naruto, Ino nodded her head and giggled a little. She said without shame, I'm sure I would. The blonde kunoichi turned back to Sakura and gave her a gentle smile. Listen Sakura-chan, let's give this our all okay. No regrets and no holding back. I'm sure we've both trained our butts off since becoming genin. I know I have. I'll admit that it took me a while because of my stupid fangirlism, but I did stop dieting and I did take my training seriously. Before what happened in the Forest of Death, I was still a fangirl over Sasuke. But, now I want to take my career far more seriously than I have. I want to be a serious kunoichi and I want to become as strong as Lady Tsunade, if not stronger someday. So, let's both do our best today okay? I know we might not be as impressive as some of the others here, but... Sakura nodded her head and giggled. I understand Ino-chan, and I feel the same way. I want to surpass Tsunade-sama as well. But for now, we have a match to fight, and we need to first overcome each other. Let the best woman win, right? Whoever wins, let us hold no grudges, alright? We're friends Ino-chan, no more rivalry between us. I want us to be best friends again. You're my sister Ino-chan, in all but blood. So, please, can we go back to being friends? She begged earnestly. At this point, Ino could feel tears forming in her eyes and saw that Sakura was also crying. Ino wiped away her tears and gave her friend a slow nod. I'd like that very much Sakura-chan. Now, let's have some fun, okay? Proctor, please start the match. She asked for. When the proctor yelled for the match to begin, Sakura nodded at him too. The Pinkett then hurled a couple of shuriken at her friend, which were easily deflected by two of her own shuriken, knocking them out of the air. In order to assess each other's skills and decide what to do next, the two 13-year-olds gazed into each other's eyes. Before long, Ino pulled out a kunai and lunged forward, slashing it at Sakura's chest. Sakura stopped Ino's attack by drawing her own kunai in a flash. Swinging, blocking, ducking, and weaving, they engaged in a furious duel. They shifted around one another and paced back and forth, but their battle had not advanced. After a while, they both leapt away from each other and started attempting to strategize their next moves. What ought I to do? What is she going to do next? How might Naruto-kun respond? These and other thoughts crossed their minds. At least Sakura considered the final query. After giving it some thought, the pink-haired girl made a hand seal that Naruto was accustomed to and inhaled deeply before letting it out gradually. She had no idea how many she could produce, but she was prepared to take the chance if it meant she would have a chance. She exclaimed, "Shadow clone technique." 2 Sakura clones materialized in a puff of smoke in an instant. Sakura collapsed to her hands and knees, panting with exhaustion, as they appeared. Her clones knelt down and gave her a gentle pat on the back as they assisted her in standing up. Sakura nodded to her clones and gave Ino a ferocious glare once she was certain she could remain upright. Before the 3 of them charged at Ino, she said, "Let's do this." It startled the blonde. She had never thought Sakura would employ such a tactic. She also didn't think Sakura would be able to stand after employing such a powerful chakra technique. She glanced up at Naruto and realized why her best friend was able to continue fighting in this manner. She did it so he could be proud of her. Ino gave her friend and her shadow clones a gentle smile before making a few hand seals of her own and starting to talk. Wind release. Lashing whip technique. Her right hand clenched into a fist, and she struck out with it, causing a cracking sound as she struck the first Sakura, which exploded in a puff of smoke. The blonde had to jump backwards to avoid the blow when the second Sakura came up to her and threw a fist at Ino. Ino reacted swiftly, slashing out with the whip once more and striking the other Sakura who was approaching, causing that one to also explode in a puff of smoke. Ino shook her head and grinned at the Sakura who had attacked her. She sadly and sincerely apologized for her friend, saying, "You look like you're on your last legs, Sakura-chan. Why don't you just forfeit? It's okay. You fought your best." Sakura shook her head obstinately. The pinkett frowned and said, "No Ino. I want to prove that I have what it takes to be an excellent kunoichi. I can't do that if I give up now." Earth release. Binding hands technique. She yelled as she slammed her hands to the ground and formed a few hand seals of her own. After blinking at the technique's name, Ino felt several hands emerge from the ground beneath her and grab hold of her arms, legs, and any other part of her body that they could reach. They were obviously designed to keep her in place so she couldn't get away. But after employing this method, it was painfully clear that Sakura was now on her last legs. Ino noticed that she had just enough freedom to move her hands together as she looked down at them. She made a hand seal and fought against her restraints. She said quietly, "Mind-body switch technique," and allowed her awareness to enter Sakura's head. The mindscape of Sakura. As she emerged in Sakura's mindscape, Ino glanced around bewildered. When she first appeared in Sakura's thoughts, this was not what she had anticipated. For heaven's sake, it was a black void. Typically, a person's mindscape would have a form that you could walk through to explore their memories, analyze their mental processes, or even take over their mind if you so desired. However, this was more than she had anticipated. At this moment, someone else stepped in front of her. At the same time, it was Sakura and not Sakura. This Sakura was looking at Ino with a puzzled smile on her face. She had yellow eyes and pure white hair. She snapped her fingers, and a desk and 2 chairs materialized, one for Ino and one for not Sakura. Not Sakura sat down and gestured for Ino to follow suit. Who are you? What's going on here? Ino chose to ask the obvious question, or, perhaps more accurately, questions. Not Sakura nodded her head in comprehension and her smile widened a little. "I suppose it would be best to start at the beginning, wouldn't it? I am Sakura, and yet I am not Sakura, as you have already deduced. You see, when she was younger, she developed a certain mental disorder known as dissociative identity disorder, otherwise, or more commonly known as, provided." As soon as not Sakura opened his mouth to respond, Ino's eyes widened in comprehension and he said, "Multiple personality disorder." Not Sakura grinned and gave a single hand clap. Exactly. The reason for this is simple. Sakura was always a shy girl growing up and was oftentimes teased for her big forehead. She was soft-spoken and therefore tended to bottle up the things she really wanted to say. Over time, this gave rise to another personality, me. Explained not Sakura. "I have never taken charge of our shared body however, but she does hear my voice in her head, pushing her to be a better person and be more outspoken. However, Recent events are causing her to lose her confidence in herself that I have helped build up in her over the years since I was given form. I may need to start taking charge here soon. She will need help in boosting her confidence from her friends soon. Naruto helps with that tremendously, but he is only one person among thousands that degrade her, considering her weak and useless. I try to boost her confidence, but again, I am only a small part of her. Be there for her, Ino-chan. I think that if the two of you take the time to work together to grow stronger as a duo, it will help boost her confidence greatly. Don't you? Before a thought occurred to her, Ino nodded her head and smiled at the not Sakura. I have a quick question for you. What do I call you? I can't keep calling you not Sakura. The girl with the white hair nodded her head and giggled a little. I have been given the name Sumiko by Sakura-chan. You may call me that if you'd like. Grinning, Ino tried the name out on her tongue. A genuine smile came to her face as she said, Sumiko. That's a pretty name. I like it. Well, Sumiko-chan, can you please convince Sakura-chan to forfeit the match? She's on her last legs as it is, and she's running dangerously low on chakra. If she pushes herself anymore, she could seriously hurt herself. I'm worried for her. At this, Sumiko scowled and gave a sorrowful nod. The yellow-eyed girl said, It was nice talking with you, Ino-chan, but you were right. Sakura can no longer continue this battle. It will hurt her to have to do so, but you have my word that I will convince her to forfeit the fight. She then watched as Ino vanished from Sakura's thoughts. Outside. Returning to the arena. After stumbling a little, Sakura turned to face Ino, whom she was still holding in the earthen hands. With a beseeching look on her face, Ino was urging her to simply give up the battle. Sakura was about to move on, gasping for air, but she stopped when she heard Sumiko's voice in her mind. She sighed and reluctantly nodded her head, although at first what she was saying to her didn't make much sense. Her eyes closed and she started to fall forward after saying, Proctor. I forfeit. I can barely move, I'm running dangerously low on chakra, and I'm just in no shape to continue fighting. Can you please free Ino-chan for me? I think I need to pass out now. But before she could hit the ground, Naruto quickly caught her. He ran his hands through her hair tenderly and smiled down at her. He hopped back up to where his sensei was and put Sakura down against the wall so she could sleep soundly after saying, You fought well, Sakura-chan. Good job. Gazing at Kakashi, Zabuza grinned. Your student fought well, all things considered. You should be proud of her, he said. Kakashi nodded his head in gratitude and grinned. As Ino passed, he said to her, I am. And Ino, congratulations on your victory. With a slight flush, Ino gave them a nod. She merely said, Thank you, and then paused to look at Naruto. Take care of her, okay Naruto. Naruto gave Ino a thumbs up, smiled, and nodded once. You got it, she's in good hands, I promise. With a nod of approval, the blonde Yamanaka went back to her group and joined them in a silent celebration of her triumph before they all awaited the selection of the next two fighters. Temari versus Tenten. At this point, Naruto scowled and glared at the writer. I'm starting to hate you and your shitty luck when it comes to that RNG, she said. Zabuza let out a sigh and frowned at Naruto. Let me guess, this is a fight that's happened millions of times and so the author tried the random number generator again to see if he could change it, only for the damn thing to end up with the same exact fight again. Naruto gave a nod. Precisely. Ah well, might as well just watch the show. Maybe the author will find a way to make things interesting this time. Tenten chose to initiate the battle by opening a scroll and channeling her chakra through it, which launched several of her weapons in Temari's direction. Temari, however, countered this by using her fan to create wind. With a sigh, Naruto turned to face the writer. He questioned incredulously, seriously. The same old shit again. You aren't being creative with this one at all. Kakashi glanced at Naruto and raised an eyebrow. Oh, well, who wins this one Naruto-kun? With a sigh, Naruto turned back to face his sensei. Temari wins it easily. Tenten can't do shit to her, sadly. She tries, believe me she tries, but it's just not enough. Tenten chose to use her most powerful technique because she was tired of all of her other methods failing. But instead, a collection of odd red and white balls emerged when she leapt into the air and started to call forth what she believed to be her weapons. She watched them all hit the ground and start to pop open, blinking at this. There were several odd creatures emerging. Some of them were useless fish that floated around on the arena floor, incapable of offering her any assistance. Another had a single horn on its head and resembled a gray rhinoceros. Another two appeared to be enormous green praying mantises. Additionally, a variety of creatures appeared to be from the same family of whatever the hell these things were, albeit with distinct elements. One had a sort of white, fluffy mane and appeared to be a yellow, spiky dog-like creature. Another had a white mane around its neck and was entirely red or orange. Another had a fin-like tail and was blue. Overall, the room was now overrun by dozens of these creatures, and it had abruptly grown too crowded for the arena. Naruto gave the author another sardonic look. Really, Pokemon? You're kidding, right? Hey, it's you complaining that nothing is interesting enough. Here you are, the result of my decision to mess with reality's rules. Things became fascinating. Now stop talking and take care of it. The author responded, breaking the fourth wall even more. Tenten blinked and merely gestured to Temari back in the arena. Okay, if you whatchamacallits can understand me, then attack her. While the others stared at her in bewilderment, the fish Pokemon just kept flapping around pointlessly. Feeling sorry for her, Naruto threw a cheat sheet to her aid. Use that. That will tell you all you need to know about the Pokemon around you. Naruto glared at the proctor and gestured to the Pokemon as he appeared to be about to disqualify Tenten from the outside assistance. Would you understand these things without a little outside help? No, didn't think so. You disqualify her, you'd have to disqualify yourself under the same conditions. Think about that. Mr. Coughs McCoughs a lot. This appeared to upset Yugao a little, but Hayate nodded in comprehension, dismissing the moniker the 13-year-old madman had adopted with ease. After all, he had been called far worse before. Tenten nodded while glancing at the cheat sheet she was holding. Okay, Vaporeon, use Water Pulse, she exclaimed, her face beaming with excitement. Tenten ordered Rhyhorn to use Takedown after Vaporeon yelled, "Va Vaporeon," and then launched its Water Pulse attack on Temari, forcing her to leap out of the way. The rhinoceros-like Pokemon slammed into Temari in a full-body tackle, sending her crashing into the arena wall as she landed, screaming out in shock and pain. The blonde Suna Kunoichi collapsed to the ground and struggled to her feet, but she was unable to do so. Temari weakly raised her hand and yelled, "Proctor, I forfeit. This is insane." To the proctor. Hayate nodded in agreement, called the match in Tenten's favor, and watched as every Pokemon returned to their Pokeballs before, inexplicably, they all vanished. Tenten uttered the word, "Ah," before smiling up at Naruto and shrugging her shoulders. You know, you gotta thank that author person you keep talking about for me. That was cool. Naruto laughed and shrugged his shoulders. He already knows, believe me. Tenten dismissed it, went back to her squad, and kept an eye on the board to see who would be the next fighters. Nara Shikamaru vs. Lee Rock. Lee, overjoyed that his turn had finally arrived, whooped and yelled. He waited a little impatiently for his opponent to descend into the arena, jumping over the railing. However, Shikamaru sighed and understood that this opponent was likely to kick his ass hard, innately lethargic versus excessively high energy stores. Yes, it was clear who would prevail in this contest. At least that was Shikamaru's current perspective. Nevertheless, he descended into the arena and stood across from his opponent, glancing up and down for a brief moment before regretting it later because that green spandex was a major eyesore. The match was about to begin when the most bizarre thing occurred. Suddenly, in a puff of smoke, a strange animal person appeared with a bag of turnips on its back. With its eyes wide open, star-shaped slits in its eyes, and a joyful smile on its face, it started yelling, "Turnips! Turnips for sale! Get turnips here! Turnips!" As it moved around the arena. After jumping over the railing and smiling, Naruto hurried up to the animal person and gave it a bunch of coins. With joy, Naruto exchanged the coins for a large bag full of white turnips from the boar-like animal person, now identified as Joan. "I'll take a whole bushel of 'em. So give 'em here, Joan," he exclaimed. "It's a pleasure doing business with you," Joan said with joy. She tried to persuade the people around her to buy some of her turnips by saying, "Anyone else interested in buyin' some of these here turnips? They're mighty fresh and taste darn good in stews. And the greens are meaty tasty. Yummy yummy." From his seat, the Sandaime Hokage got up and leapt down to Joan. After giving her a serious look for a moment, he quickly whipped out his wallet and produced some cash. Many people in the room face flagged when he said, "I'll take some as well, thank you." Instead of accepting this strange creature as if it were commonplace, they had anticipated that their Hokage would question its existence. The others soon began to agree, and the boar named Joan started to get a lot of business. She sold off all of her turnip stock, much to her delight. After wishing them all a good day, she quickly disappeared in another cloud of smoke, leaving Hayate, Shikamaru, and Lee to revert to their original positions while they stood there in shock, grinning and holding their own turnips. Hayate remarked, "Well, that was interesting." Before turning to face his girlfriend, he said, "Anyway, you're free to begin the fight when ready. These turnips would undoubtedly be useful to them in the future." He pondered what kind of food they would work best in. Lee jumped up and down in his place, thrilled to have some turnips and even more thrilled to be able to fight at last. Shikamaru charged forward and delivered a devastating kick to his opponent's face, sending him flying into the wall before he could even realize the fight had started. The Nara heir then moaned as he collapsed to the ground in a heap and struggled to stand up. "Why?" He let out a moan. "Why am I standing again? I don't understand. Why wasn't I allowed to just fall unconscious?" "Because the author decided that one hit wouldn't be enough to take you out. Your mother's frying pan has built up your endurance for pain after all," Naruto said with a smile as he yelled down at him. At this, Shikamaru flipped off the author and deadpanned. The Nara heir raised his hand and looked at the proctor, saying, "Well then, fuck you, you troublesome bastard. I'm not going to put up with this shit." Before he could say, "Forfeit," Shikamaru's mouth closed with a padlock and a zipper, and he started to struggle frantically with it. "Fuck you. You were a rotten jerk of a writer. No, 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 no." At this, Naruto scowled and shook his head. "Yep, I could have told you that would happen. You don't go screwing with the author like that, Shika. You're in for it now. I hope you're prepared for a beating, 'cause it looks like Bushy Brows is gonna give you one." As promised by Naruto, Lee started beating poor Shikamaru, and to his horror and dismay, Shikamaru remained awake the entire time. He begged Kami to stop it while tears streamed down his cheeks. But no matter how hard he tried, this was the author's story, and as such, the author's rules. He had to learn his lesson, despite his deep affection for Shikamaru. "What the devil lesson?" Shikamaru yelled in his head. "Is there a lesson here? I've only discovered that Lee is a hyperactive nutcase, that the author can make crazy things happen at random, that I can endure excruciating pain and remain conscious throughout it, and... Oh Kami, I'm sorry, author, just stop it, okay?" Hayate declared Lee the winner of the match after Shikamaru's padlock and mouth zipper vanished, allowing him to finally yell the magic words, "I forfeit." At the top of his lungs, Shikamaru let out a sigh of relief at this point and fell to the ground, letting the medical staff come and take him away. As they removed him, he moaned, "So much pain." Naruto gave a small laugh. Maybe that'll teach him not to badmouth the author anymore. Zabuza glanced at Naruto and raised an eyebrow. "Oh, you've been bashing on him this entire time. How come he hasn't done anything to you?" Naruto looked directly into Zabuza's eyes and shrugged his shoulders. "I'm immune to his wrath. We're both really random people, so we get along pretty well. Plus, he knows I don't mean anything by it. Right, Mr. Author?" "Oh, yeah, she is constantly disparaging me despite the fact that I try my hardest to write these stories. Very pleasant, Naruki, very pleasant." Then Naruto grinned and said, "See, he's fiend." Uncertain of what to make of their exchange, Zabuza raised an eyebrow and glanced between Naruto and the writer. He looked at the board and furrowed his brow at what he saw, deciding to ignore it for the time being. He smiled and said, "Well, it looks like you're finally up. Go knock 'em dead, kid." Naruto grinned broadly as he glanced at the board and leapt down into the arena, where his opponent, Kiba, was already waiting. Naruto decided to act quickly before the fight started after glancing at Akamaru. Akamaru, hold on a moment, okay? I've got something to show ya real quick." Naruki quickly changed her appearance by using the sexy technique and then the transformation technique. She was now 5 feet and 4 inches tall, with light red eyes, full, pouty lips, and long, wavy brown hair that reached her buttocks. She had a basket on her arm and appeared to be in her mid to late 20s. Akamaru recognized her right away and ran to Naruki, wagging his tail excitedly as he gave her a few more barks. Naruki knelt down and gave Akamaru a joyful smile while petting him. "I'm glad you recognize me in this form, Akamaru. Remember all those healthy treats I make for you? Well, here's the deal. If you help Kiba fight me, I'll stop giving you those treats. Understand? If you want to keep getting those treats from me, you have to stay out of this fight and let Kiba and me duke it out one-on-one. Okay, Akamaru?" she asked gently. "Akamaru, don't listen to him, buddy. He's only trying to trick you. Kiba exclaimed, wide-eyed, and blinked in surprise when Orochimaru barked back at him. Kiba's eyes widened when he got a few more barks in return. What do you mean he's been giving you treats for years? They can't possibly be good for you. Kiba said, Hanane approves of them. What the fuck? Damn. They're really that good for you, huh? Kiba sagged and nodded a few times in agreement after getting a few more barks in return. He said, alright buddy, it's okay. You can sit this one out, I understand. Orochimaru gave him a cheerful bark in return and went back to join Team 8 above. Naruki gave Kiba a sheepish head rub after glancing at her. Sorry about that, Kiba, I kinda just want this to be a one-on-one fight between us. Know what I mean? The 13-year-old Inuzuka teenager gave a sympathetic nod. He was more than eager to start the fight and said, yeah, I getcha. Let's just get this fight underway then. Proctor, we're ready now. After giving a nod and yelling for the game to start, Hayate bounded off. As soon as he did, Kiba lunged forward and punched Naruto, who deftly blocked it and kicked Kiba hard in the side in return. Kiba winced at the force of the blow and barely deflected this retaliatory kick. Kiba jumped back and scanned his opponent, deciding to make a tactical retreat for the time being. He thought it would be simple to defeat Naruto, but with that level of strength. This battle was not going to be a simple one. Taking Naruto a little more seriously, Kiba sighed reluctantly and pulled out a food pill, chomping it down and then swallowing it. When the Inuzuka teenager felt his chakra spike, he squatted down and whispered, 4 legs technique. Naruto saw Kiba's pupils narrow into slits, his canines grow longer, his nails grow into claws, and more. Naruto scowled at this, cocking his head and making a mediocre hand gesture. If you're going for the Beast Boy look, you've got it down pat. But it's really not all that attractive. You're more likely to scare the girls off this way than you are to attract them. Just sayin', Kiba. Kiba jumped up and pointed a clawed finger at Naruto after making a face fail. As soon as Naruto said, would you take this seriously, damn it? We're in the middle of a fight here and you're making jokes about my appearance. Kiba became extremely upset. Wait, how could you possibly know what girls would want in a guy? Naruto shook his head and let out a sigh. I just do, okay. Now drop it and let's get back to the fight. The only people who knew Naruto's true gender and the reason behind her saying such a thing to Kiba were Zabuza, Haku, Yugao, and the Sandaime Hokage, who all laughed to themselves in the meantime. The 4 of them shared an inside joke that left the others perplexed, but no one spoke up. When Kiba became frustrated with Naruto's carefree demeanor down in the arena, he abruptly appeared behind Naruto and swung his clawed hands at the back of Naruto's neck before disappearing. The blonde, anticipating this, sprang forward to evade the assault. But Kiba looked at the odd piece of jewelry that was now hanging from one of his claws and exclaimed, what the heck is this? Kiba's eyes widened as he looked up and saw Naruto, or at least what was once Naruto. Naruto, since when did you wear? After years of concealing her gender, Naruki stood in the middle of the arena, her true identity visible to everyone. Her golden, long hair had fallen out of her pigtails and now hung just below her luscious butt. As in her disguise, the 13-year-old girl had 3 whisker marks on either side of her cheeks and stunning blue eyes. But that orange monstrosity was not on her, unlike her male disguise. No, Naruki was dressed in the fishnet bodysuit that Anko had purchased for her, which was topped off with a red jacket that bore black flames. At the moment, it was unzipped, revealing a generous amount of her breasts. Everyone could see that she was in good health and that her C-cup size was appropriate for her age. She wore track pants, which were dark gray and nearly black, with a yellow stripe running up and down the sides. Lastly, to complete the look, she was wearing blue ninja sandals. Naruki sighed in resignation and frowned at her Gramps. A sorrowful, well, Gramps, looks like the secret's out now. I'm sorry. Sarutobi shook his head and sighed too. It's not your fault, Naruki-chan. I never expected for something like this to happen. The seals on it to keep it in place have held all your life. It's only expected that they would wear down over time to the point that an attack from someone would be enough to rip the necklace free, I suppose. Sakura, who had woken up during Shikamaru's match, looked at her teammate in disbelief before her cheeks flushed angrily. She exclaimed, "Why you mean? I kissed a girl, and I liked it." Sakura drew back and flushed even more when Naruki turned to face her and raised an eyebrow in interest. Sorry Naruto-kun. Actually, Hokage-sama called you Naruki. Is that your real name then? With a sigh, Naruki nodded her head. Yes, my real name is Naruki Uzumaki. And yes, I am, in fact, a girl just like you, Ino, Hinata, Kurenai, etc. And yes, Haku-kun has known about me being a girl all this time. So has Zabuza, so has Yugao Oni-chan and Gramps, aka Hokage-sama. They're the only ones that have known this entire time. It's been one huge secret, and now it's out. So Sakura, do you still want to be with me, even knowing what I am? Naruki raised her eyebrows. Sakura briefly gaped in disbelief at her recently revealed female teammate Naruki before cracking a tiny smile. She gave it some thought and came to the conclusion that she didn't really care. She still harbored feelings for Naruki, the same person. She may not be able to provide for her children in the future, but they may figure out a way to get around that. Sakura gave her friend a wink and a gentle smile while nodding her head. Of course I do, Naruki-chan. I don't care what you are. Boy or girl, you're still the one I want to be with. Clearly sensing that Sakura would have declined to be with her, Naruki blinked in surprise at this and quickly began to flush until her neck was as red as a tomato. She looked away, giggled shyly, and scratched at the tip of her nose. Well, okay then. We'll have to talk with Haku-kun and Anko-chan then, she replied. After giggling at this, Sakura turned to smile at Haku. Sakura leaned in close and teased Haku by running her hand up and down his chest before whispering in his ear, I'm expecting you to let me in on this relationship buster. Besides, Naruki's too much woman for just one of us to handle. Read Haku-kun, she joked. Haku nodded slowly, flushed. Unaccustomed to such a gesture from Naruki's teammate, he stammered, right Sakura-ch. Sakura, as you say. Today, she was being a little brash. There was a part of him that liked it and another part that blamed his girlfriend. As he added the sound effect and made a whipping motion with his hand, Zabuza couldn't help but laugh aloud. He laughed even harder as he said, and he's whipped. With a deadpan expression, Yugao pulled a frying pan out of thin air and gave Zabuza a slap across the head. I seem to recall you being whipped as well when I order you to do something at the house, Zabuza-chan. Don't you go teasing Haku-chan about being whipped when you, yourself, are whipped as well. The way his girlfriend behaved around her houseguest made Hayate perspire down in the arena. He would never understand why the Hokage had forced them to live together. Nevertheless, he was pleased for her as long as she was enjoying herself. Zabuza didn't have any silencing seals set up, so they had mind-blowing sex in her room, which was next to his, just to scare the poor bastard. Until he literally got down on his hands and knees in front of the Hokage to install some silencing seals in his home's room so he could sleep, that is. They had ceased tormenting poor Zabuza after that. Nevertheless, the sex was fantastic. So this is why you smelled like perfume. I was wondering about that. What kind of guy would wear perfume? Kiba asked, obviously unable to come up with a response to such a question, bringing everyone back to earth. And, wait, what the hell did you mean no girl would find me attractive? Sighing to herself, Naruki gazed at Kiba and replied with a bored voice, yes Kiba, that is why I smelled like perfume. I like how certain scents of perfume smell. I can't help it. I also like certain colors of nail polish, but I can't decide on what color I want to do my nails in. I was thinking about asking Kurenai when I finally got the chance to reveal my true gender because she's got great fashion sense. Then again, Ino's another good choice. Decisions. That's not important right now. Get to the girl's part. Kiba yelled, growling at this and becoming irritated with Naruki's digression. The blonde Uzumaki sighed and shook her head, scolding Kiba for interrupting her. Look Kiba, I'm a girl and I don't find you attractive. Okay, you're my friend, or at least I think of you as one. Not sure if you feel the same towards me or not, but that's not important. But anyways, as your friend, I'm going to let you know a few things that we women do not find attractive in a male. She sighed and glanced at Kiba before scolding him. First off, your fashion sense could use a little work. It's a bit repugnant. But it's not bad overall. Second, you stink. You need to bathe or take a shower more often. Third, you need to work on your attitude a bit. You can come off as an overconfident, brash, stupid jerk sometimes and, while some might find that attractive in a guy, others don't. Finally, I know that your mom and sister have had to beat this lesson into you, you need to respect women. You're still learning that part, but once you've got that down pat, you'll be better off for it, believe me. Uncertain of how to react to the advice, he had just received. Kiba blinked. Okay. Then can you answer me this one question? Why do so many girls fall all over themselves trying to get into Sasuke's pants? He asked bluntly after a brief pause. Naruki grimaced and sighed. All of the women in the room murmured in agreement with her when she said, because they're idiots that are a disgrace to women everywhere. That's why. Sakura and Ino, however, just looked down in shame. In all seriousness, I'm not entirely sure, Kiba. Women are hard to understand, even for those of us that are women. Just like men are hard for us women to understand sometimes and vice versa. If you ask the fangirls, they'd tell you that they wanted to cure his wounded heart and help him to restore his lost clan. But in truth, a lot of them just wanted Sasuke as a trophy husband. The last of the Uchiha clan in Konohagakure would make for a wonderful trophy husband to show off to people. Kind of a big, fuck you, look at what I've got and you don't. To people, they didn't care about Sasuke as a person, he was more of an object to them. Oh sure, they'd gladly spread their legs for him and help him restore his clan, but it was more about them than anything. So yeah, girls are complicated, Kiba. Nuff said. As he took in everything that had just been explained to him, Kiba nodded slowly. I see, man, that's kinda deep. He replied, not sure whether to envy the bastard or pity him now. Naruki shook her head and giggled. Up to you, Kiba, either or, it doesn't really matter. All I know is I don't give a damn about Sasuke, so pitying him for all of that just isn't in me, she replied with a smirk. I must admit, it was a lot of fun to nail him with my crotch seeker. The blonde grinned. Kiba stepped back in terror as his eyes widened. C-C crotch seeker. What the fuck, man, you have an attack called the crotch seeker. With a devilish smile, Naruki raised her fist. Hell yeah I do. Wanna see it in action, Kiba? I promise you'll just love it. Kiba turned to face the proctor right away and yelled, fuck no. Fuck this shit, proctor. I forfeit. He screamed as Naruki used her patented crotch seeker to nail him in the crotch just as he was about to say he forfeited, all the while laughing uncontrollably. Every man in the audience instantly winced, and their hands shot to their privates in mutual suffering. But the sheer strength of such an attack made the women in the audience smile. It is obvious that this attack would make any man reconsider having sex with a woman again, and many of them were considering learning this exact tactic for themselves. Without knowing why, the men shivered together in horror. All they knew was that something horrible was taking place, and there was nothing they could do about it. With sympathy for poor Kiba, Hayate turned to face Naruki and gestured at her. In an attempt to save Kiba's manhood, the medics hurried into the room to carry him away. The W winner of the match is Naruki Uzumaki. Medics, hurry, I think his balls shot up into his throat. If you hurry, you might be able to save one of them. He exploded. Naruki, meanwhile, turned to face the proctor and gave him a menacing fist wave. Before she gave him a charming smile and started to skip away and up the stairs to her team, she said, you took away my fun, Mr. Proctor Man. If you weren't Yugao Oni-chan's boyfriend, I'd slug ya. Naruki glomped onto Haku after she had returned to her team and kissed him passionately, holding on to him the whole time. She leaned back and gave him a wink after they had finished kissing. Now that my true gender has been revealed, I can do that more often. Yay for cookies, she exclaimed with excitement. Haku considered asking, but changed his mind. He saw instead how Sakura grabbed Naruki by the shoulder, turned her to face her, and leaned in to kiss Naruki. He watched with a slight smirk as they shared a long kiss. He was struggling to control a particular aspect of his anatomy and found this sight oddly erotic. Observing his son's uneasiness, Zabuza gave Naruki a head pat and grinned at her and Sakura. Alright, that's enough, you two. Break it up. He nodded toward the board after they had parted ways. The next match has been chosen. Let's get back to watching already. Naruki yelled, yes sir, Mr. Popsicle sir, while saluting. Kakashi blinked and cast a curious glance between Naruki and Zabuza. Popsicle, why is she calling you Popsicle? Zabuza shook his head and sighed. Hell if I know, Kakashi. She's random as random could possibly be. I've learned to just go along with whatever she says. It's easier that way. Kakashi glanced at Naruki and gave her an eye smile while nodding his head in comprehension. So, a girl huh? How come I never knew about this? Naruki looked away and rubbed the back of her head. It was kind of on a need-to-know basis. Gramps didn't feel you needed to know, Kakashi-sensei. So, sorry. Kakashi grinned at his pupil and shook his head. It's fine. Anyways, Zabuza's right, the next match is just about to start. Let's watch. Hinata Hyuga vs. Neji Hyuga. When Naruki saw the two down in the arena, she exclaimed, "Well shit. This can't end good." As Hinata stood opposite her cousin, her thoughts were racing. She was thinking so much at the moment that she was hardly aware of her surroundings. Why must I battle Neji-Nisan? He will murder me. Then Hinata looked up at Naruki, who was looking at her with intense interest, but she quickly looked away, thinking, Naruto-kun is actually a girl. I still find it hard to believe. I've lost all sense of how to feel. I doubt that he or she would ever accept someone like me. I wish I knew what to do, Kami. To be a jerk, Neji chose to make fun of his cousin and gave her a nasty smirk. With his arms folded across his chest, Neji looked in the direction she was looking and said, "You should just forfeit, Hinata-sama. You know that you don't stand a chance against me with your meager skills. Hell, you look terrified just being in the same room as me. Ah, I forgot, you have a crush on that filthy commoner, don't you? It must come as quite a shock to you that Naruto turned out to be nothing more than another common whore, didn't it?" Zabuza and the other members of Naruki's care team practically growled at the branch house Hyuga in the ring when they heard this. Naruki, who was opposed to such a conversation, replied, "At least I'm not a pathetic wannabe like you, Neji Hyuga. Someone who thinks he's so special, and yet he believes himself to be trapped by fate. You could fight against your fate, but you're such a devout believer in the ideal that fate rules all. How pathetic you are, loser." Neji's eyes briefly widened before he gave the blonde Uzumaki a menacing glare. "What do you know? You're just lowborn trash." Naruki gave him a menacing grin and shook her head. You know, I think you've got that backwards. After all, you're only worth a few specks of dirt. Just another slave of the Hyuga main family. Too afraid to stand up for yourself, and you blame Hinata-chan for your father's death too, I believe. Tell me, why could you possibly hate your cousin so much? What has she ever done to you? In order to go and beat up that bitch who dared to make fun of him, Neji was growling now and appeared to be about to say, "Fuck the match. It's because of that worthless bitch that my father is dead. She should have been," he yelled, pointing to Hinata instead. "What, were you going to say she should have been stronger? Wasn't she just, 3 years old at the time? Tell me, Neji, could you have put up a fight against a foe like that when you were that young?" "No, I didn't think so, Kami, you're pathetic. Go on, Hinata-chan, kick this asshole's, ass. Don't let him intimidate you." The Hyuga prodigy growled and swiveled to give his cousin a fierce look. "Mark my words, Hinata-sama. You will die here and that bastard father of yours can't do anything about it. And then, when I get the opportunity, I'll kill that Naruki bitch too, just to make sure you suffer more." As she heard this, Hinata's eyes narrowed as she said, "I don't care if you hurt me, but threatening someone dear to my heart. I've decided, Neji, no matter what, I'm going to strike you down here today. Nobody, and I do mean nobody, will hurt Naruki-chan as long as I breathe. So if it means I have to kill you to protect her, I'll do it." Neji's eyes slightly widened before he braced himself for the battle. "No, Hinata-sama, not if I murder you first." Naruki scowled deeply and watched intently as Hinata and Neji engaged in combat after the proctor declared the match and instructed them to start. She needs to try something new if she wants to win. If she tries to fight him on his terms like this, she'll lose, he said quietly to the others. The others, including Kakashi, nodded in agreement. Kakashi remarked, "Good eye, Naruki-chan. Yes, Neji is the superior fighter in the ways of the traditional gentle fist taijutsu. Hinata is more flexible and I'm sure that the traditional style isn't well suited to her. She needs a style that's unique to her and her abilities. However, if I know anything about the Hyugas, they won't let her even attempt to create a new style of the gentle fist technique because it goes against tradition." Naruki laughed at this and replied, "Tradition schmission. If they don't let Hinata-chan create a style suited for her, she'll just get killed on a mission outside of the village. Unless of course, that's what they're hoping for." Yugao paused for a moment and then said, "Just in case, we should invite Hinata to come live with us. She'd be much safer with us than she would be with them. Aside from that, she'll be able to develop a style that's unique to her away from her clan." The young blonde nodded and saw his cousin stumble backwards, clutching at her chest in agony as she started coughing up blood after Neji delivered a forceful blow to her chest. When Neji said something that enraged Hinata, she was tempted to intervene and break up the fight. I suppose it's only fitting for you to bow to me before I kill you. And I'll gladly do it right in front of that whore you're so fond of. In fact, I might just let you live to watch me end the life of that bitch before I inevitably take yours as well. At least you'd both get to spend your time in hell together. This was enough for Hinata, who closed her eyes and mouthed the words, sorry. Then she formed a seal and applied it to her cousin's forehead, causing him to fall to the ground and scream in pain. She held the seal until her cousin passed out from the agony of it in order to convey her message to him. She then let go of Neji and the hand seal before she fell to her knees and started coughing up more blood. Not quite expecting such a result from their fight, if you can call it that, Hayate scowled at this. Exactly how to decide the match was a mystery to him. Neji was unconscious on the one hand. On the other hand, Hinata was understandably confused because he was obviously in no condition to continue the fight. Everyone watched as Hiruzen stood up and said, seeing as neither combatant is able to continue the battle, I declare this match to be a draw. Neither of them will advance to the finals. They were all looking at the Hokage pleadingly. No one dared to challenge this ruling. Rather, the room was silent, with no one speaking. Naruki sighed and shook her head as the medics entered and carried the two Hyugas away. That guy's an asshole. Haku gave a nod of agreement. Definitely. Hopefully this will teach him a lesson, because if it doesn't, I'm going to beat him senseless until he gets the damn message. Daring to threaten you and call you a whore. Yeah, I'll kick his ass into next week every damn day if need be. Naruki put her hands lightly on her boyfriend's chest, smiled at him, and then leaned in to give him a tender peck on the lips. She said, "You're such a sweetheart, Haku-kun," and then she embraced him. The ice user just gave her a tight hug after blushing a little. Anything for you, Naruki-chan. Unable to control themselves, the different women in the room were grinning and oohing at the scene. Though they were few in number, some of the guys were genuinely showing signs of jealousy toward Haku. For the time being, however, the proctor ignored that and turned to smile slightly at the lone genin who had not yet engaged in combat. Seeing as there's no one remaining for Genin Choji Akamichi to fight, he gets an automatic pass into the finals. Congrats on being the lucky winner this time around. After letting out a sigh of relief and giving a grateful nod, Choji and the others went to the arena floor to draw numbers to decide who they would face in the championship match. 6. Yuppie! Exclaimed Naruki, and a moment later, he giggled. Ino smiled slightly as she said, 3. With a little sigh of relief that he wouldn't have to fight someone right away, Choji said, 7. Tenten said, 5, and then looked at Naruki. She will be a formidable foe. Gaara said in an emotionless voice, 4. He turned away after glancing at the person who would face him in the finals and frowning thoughtfully. If I killed her friend, Naruki would not approve. I'll have to spare her, I suppose. Kankuro rubbed his butt once more after saying, 2. The pain is still there. Naruki shook her head and sighed. Figures Sasuke would get number 1. That'll just boost his ego even further. Wonderful. After grinning, Anko gave Naruki a head pat. Don't let it get to you, Naruki-chan. When he faces you in combat, if he does, you'll crush the little prick like he deserves. Might actually bring him down a few pegs. When the Hokage started talking, Naruki looked up and nodded in agreement. As he explained that they would have a month to get ready for the finals, she drew in and out. She wasn't particularly interested in what else he said. Instead, she closed her eyes to block out everything and hummed a song to herself. Hiruzen nodded to Hayate when he saw she wasn't paying attention, and Hayate pulled out a horizon and struck the young woman in the back of the head. Naruki rubbed the back of her head and whimpered, then sulked at Hayate. That wasn't very nice. That's when she heard the Hokage's voice. Perhaps you should listen to what I'm saying instead of tuning me out. I know all this stuff already, but I'm wondering what kind of training I should do to get ready for my big debut in the finals. I gotta make it big and fun, said Naruki, frowning and looking back into his eyes. Despite everyone's perspiration, they chose to dismiss it as Naruki's strange behavior. Once more. Everyone was dismissed after the Hokage's brief speech, but Naruki was instructed to meet him later in his office. She turned around and left the tower with the others, nodding in comprehension. But instead of following the crowd's route, the young Uzumaki set out alone to bid her animal companions farewell. She was aware that some people were observing her, but she didn't give a damn. Rather, she put her friends first and assured them that she would come see them whenever she could. She even pledged to find a way to call upon them when she needed them. When she was done honoring her animal companions, Naruki turned to face Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro, who was still rubbing his butt, and grinned. I assume there's a reason you three are watching me. Unless you're just interested in staring at my butt, in which case, ew. I'm still the same old Naruki. Gaara chose to speak up first and shook his head. No, Naruki, I have decided that you can be trusted. I do not wish to fight you, and I don't want to upset you either. I feel strange when I see you. I wonder if this is what it means to have a friend. Regardless, in commemoration of our new friendship, I would like you to be there with us when we speak with your Hokage. After blinking a few times, Naruki grinned broadly and glomped onto Gaara. She turned to face Temari and Kankuro and said, "Ah, you called me your friend. Isn't that great Fanny Fangirl and Mr. Cloney Pants?" Both Temari and Kankuro noticed tick marks developing on their foreheads, but they decided not to complain because Gaara would undoubtedly shield his new friend. Rather, Temari sighed and made the decision to inform the crazy blonde of their predicament. With some hesitation, she said, "Yes, that's wonderful. Anyways, our father has made plans with Orochimaru to invade Konoha. We've decided, or rather Gaara decided that we needed to tell you and your Hokage all that we know about the upcoming invasion." After a moment, Naruki's eyes widened and she said, "That actually reminds me. I signed the snake contract. If Meaniehead is planning to use the snakes in the invasion, then I'll just have to have a talk with the head honcho. And if he's mean, I'll discipline him just like you should with an unruly pet." The younger blonde blinked once more before asking, "You mean that Mr. Snakey Wakey that I chased off before? Meanie ol' Snakey Bakey is dangerous after all, huh? Ah well. Might as well talk to the old man about this and see what he has to say. If need be, I'll torture Snaky Pants again to make him stop." Naruki nodded her head as if it were the wisest thing she had ever said. She called Orochimaru like 4 different names. And the snake contract, how the hell did she get her hands on something like that? Kankuro said after Temari and he exchanged glances while Naruki energetically waved their linked hands back and forth and Gaara actually laughed a little. With Kankuro at her side, Temari shook her head and started to follow the Jinchuriki pair. "Something I've figured out about Naruki-san is that it's best not to try and figure out how she does things. We should just accept that she's capable of doing the impossible and leave it at that." Nodding in agreement with that sentiment, Kankuro shrugged. "That's a good point. Ah well, at least she isn't some boring old fangirl. Did you know I actually heard some of that Uchiha brat's fangirls going all gaga over him? What the hell makes a brat like that so popular? Is it the brooding thing?" Temari took a breath and replied, "I'm a girl and even I don't understand it. Fangirls are crazy and they are an embarrassment to proper kunoichi everywhere." Kankuro was about to respond when Naruki materialized in front of him, gazing at him with interest. "You wanna be more like Sasuke, huh? Might wanna practice your brooding face and pretend to have a stick up your butt then. Be abrasive to everyone and say, HN. Almost every other sentence. Also, you might wanna lose the makeup. Makes you look like a funny clony clown." When Kankuro saw his brother standing behind Naruki, glaring at him, he sighed and said, "I don't want to be like that punk. I'm just wondering what's so special about him, that's all." His first reaction was to yell at her and say it wasn't makeup. Naruki sighed and replied, "Nothing. Sasuke's nothing special, he's just been spoiled a lot and people pretty much worship the ground he walks on like it's something special. They expect him to repay them somehow, someday, boo it. Well, that's just not in his nature. Now, enough of the chit-chat. Let's go see Mr. Oldie Pants. You don't like to use actual names for people, do you?" asked Kankuro. Raise an eyebrow at this. "I use people's names. Just not as often as people would like. I just like to be weird. It's more fun that way," the crazy blonde said after giving a brief, adorable tilt to her head. "I suppose it must be. You seem like a pretty happy and energetic person. It's actually kind of refreshing," Temari said, chuckling a little. In response, Naruki booped Temari on the nose and nodded. "Boopy boop," she exclaimed as she turned around and skipped up to Gaara, taking his hand once more before she persuaded him to begin skipping with her, much to his perplexity. Temari and Kankuro had to suppress the chill that was about to run down their spines when they saw this. "We never speak of this sight again. Deal?" Kankuro nodded, but he couldn't express his shock at what he was seeing. Office of the Hokage. Hiruzen's eyebrows went up in reaction to what he was witnessing. You know that when I asked you to come see me that I didn't mean for you to bring your new friends, right? After sticking her tongue out at the elderly man, Naruki said, it's not like I didn't have a reason for bringing them with me. They mentioned an invasion planned by Mr. Snaky Pants and their father, Mr. Cage Bunny Man. She nodded her head as though nothing was wrong and was unaware of the looks she received from the others. With a puzzled expression on his face, Hiruzen questioned, you're a little hyper right now, aren't you Naruki-chan? Naruki nodded after tapping her chin thoughtfully. Yep, I'm feeling full of energy after the fun back in the Forest of Death and then in the preliminaries. I got to nail someone with my crotch seeker too, so that was fun. You also annoyed the author so much he made a tentacle monster to violate me. Kankuro exclaimed, shedding crocodile tears. I'll never forget that humiliation. My butt still hurts. Temari shook her head and sighed. I'm a little upset too. I was beaten by those Pokemon things and not by Tenten herself. The author was feeling a little sadistic at the time, wasn't he? Later, Hiruzen laughed and asked, remind me again why we're breaking the fourth wall here. Naruki pumped her fist into the air and exclaimed, because I'm just awesome like that. Now, enough about that. You wanted to see me for some reason, and these three need to talk to you about the invasion planned by Snaky Butt. Hiruzen breathed a sigh of relief and no, true. Now, the reason I asked you here was because, now that your secret is out, we need to figure out what to do about the villagers. Your fellow genin are going to talk about you being a young woman, there's no avoiding that. Soon enough, the news will spread throughout the village and there's no telling what people will try now that your true gender has been revealed. I think it would be best if you moved into your parents' home and trained there, away from those who would wish you harm. Where you're living now is a great place, but it's just not safe enough anymore. So I wanted to give you your inheritance and show you to your new home. Zabuza, Haku, and Yugao can move in with you there if you want them to. In fact, you're welcome to invite anyone you want to come live with you, so long as you trust them. She cocked her head and replied, you mean I can finally move into my parents' home? I thought you wanted to wait until I made Chunin to let me have all that they left me. Something about safety precautions or whatever. I'm curious though, what do you plan to do when they demand to know why I'm living in the Uzumaki estate? They know my father lived there with my mother, and seeing me living in the fort's old home might make them feel like it's a huge crime for just being there. Hiruzen sighed as he said, simple. I'm going to announce your heritage to the village and inform them of just who they've been mistreating all this time. It'll be up to them on whether or not they accept it as the truth or not. If anyone dares to harass you or try to hurt you, just let me know and I'll deal with it in my own way. I won't let anyone hurt you. Despite blushing slightly, the young blonde nodded her head in gratitude. Hiruzen turned to face the other three people in the room after grinning at this. So, you wanted to give me information about the invasion my old student is planning. I assume, based on your presence here and your knowledge about this invasion that my old friend, your father, is planning to betray us. If I had to fathom a guess, I'd say he's desperate to remedy a certain situation. Am I correct in thinking so? Gaara nodded and replied, yes, Hokage-sama. The Wind Daimyo has been hiring Konoha shinobi solely and has stopped all funding to our village in favor of giving it all to you and your people. Things are bad in our village right now and we truly need that funding. Before I tell you anything, I want to know something. Whose idea was it to convince the daimyo of our lands to give all his business to the shinobi of this village? The third nodded his head and said, knowing my luck, it's Danzo Shimura that's behind this. He's very good at making enemies for our village. He thinks of himself as a true patriot of this village and thinks that his way is the right way to do things. In my personal opinion, I think he's pure evil and deserves to be wiped from existence entirely. No heaven, no hell, just cold death. If I could just get proof of his wrongdoings, I could have him executed. Sadly, Hiruzen glanced at Naruki and blinked a few times as if a light bulb had suddenly gone off in his brain. Naruki-chan, you have a habit of doing the impossible. If I asked you to deal with Danzo somehow, do you think you could do it? After glancing briefly at her new companions, Naruki turned to face the Hokage and gave him a resolute nod. Of course I can, but, could I take my new bestest buddy with me? He could be really helpful. Looking from Naruki to Gaara, Hiruzen asked, well, what do you say Gaara-kun? Interested in taking down the biggest threat to the peace we want to create. Danzo's responsible for a lot of crimes, even going behind my back to have the Uchiha clan annihilated by one of its own. And yes, I do mean Itachi Uchiha. TCH. Itachi and Makoto were some of the only Uchiha that were actually pure of heart. Fugaku and the others were a bunch of corrupt bastards. I wanted to try and end things peacefully with them, but Danzo, clenching his fists tight, Hiruzen shook his head and replied, "If the two of you can get the evidence I need for everything I need to do to set things right, I would greatly appreciate it. I also want you to end Danzo no matter what it takes. Will you agree to this mission?" Gaara folded his arms across his chest and gave the Hokage a serious look. "I have conditions before I accept such a mission with Naruki. If you are willing to adhere to my requests, I will undertake this mission with my siblings and Naruki." With a comforting smile, the Hokage said, "Very well. Name your conditions, Gaara-kun." Gaara smiled and said, "First, I would like for my siblings and I to be accepted as shinobi of Konohagakure. If we're to help you, it means betraying our village. Therefore, I want to live here in Konoha with Naruki." Hiruzen accepted that with a nod. "That's easy enough to do. What are your other requests?" "If we're to live in this village, we'll need a home. I was hoping we could move in with Naruki, seeing as she's the only friend I've ever had and I want to strengthen that bond." Hiruzen looked at Naruki and raised an eyebrow, saying, "What do you say, Naruki-chan? It's up to you, after all. You're welcome to stay in my new home with me and my family," Naruki said, grinning slightly at Gaara. "But don't peek on me in the shower or anything. I still enjoy my privacy, despite everything I do and how I act." "Why would I peek on you? Is there some purpose in the act of peeping on someone?" Gaara asked, blinking. Kankuro grimaced, unsure whether to think his brother was really that stupid or if he was simply ignorant of the birds and bees. Temari perspired. Then he seemed to have a sudden epiphany. They seemed to be thinking the same thing as they looked at Temari. Gaara was genuinely unaware of the bees and birds. A little talk would seem to be necessary. His innocent question caused Naruki to blink, and then he said, Gaara-kun. Were you ever given the birds and the bees talk?" "Birds and the bees? What do an animal and an insect have to do with peeping on you?" Gaara said, tilting his head cutely. With a nervous giggle, Naruki said, "I guess that answers my question. Old man, think you could give him that talk later? 'Cause it just wouldn't feel right to leave things be like this. I'd do it, but I'd be really embarrassed too." Hiruzen nodded his head and gave a small laugh. "Of course. For now though, I need your answer in regards to the mission I would like to give you." Naruki laughed and replied, "I'll take it. That old guy won't stand a chance. The power of insanity shall prevail. Mwahahahahaha." Her actions left Temari and Kankuro perspiring, but it was Gaara's sly remark, "The power of insanity is quite strong indeed. I'm going to enjoy this," that truly got to them. "That's the spirit. We shall be insane together and dance on their graves. Woot woot." Gaara laughed and remarked, "Mother will love his blood." Then he heard what Naruki had to say. "Their graves. Does this Danzo have allies?" Hiruzen rubbed the bridge of his nose and sighed. "Most likely. I ordered him to disband Root, but knowing him, he's kept it running right under my nose. So I want you to go in expecting heavy resistance. This is a mission for just the two of you, so I have high expectations for you." "Pardon me, Hokage-sama, but what about us? Shouldn't we help them on this mission?" Temari scowled in response. The old Hokage gave a headshake. "No, I've got a different sort of mission for the two of you. I need you to make it look as if you're staying in your hotel. Orochimaru likely has eyes throughout the village and will notice any change in your behavior. I think it's safe to assume Gaara-kun here is the trump card that he's counting on. After all, he houses the Ikibi, correct?" After the Suna siblings' eyes widened, Gaara gave a nod of approval. "You are correct. Orochimaru is counting on me to unleash the Ikibi on the village. At the very least, I'd make a good distraction while he tries to achieve his true goal." With a sigh, Hiruzen nodded his head in comprehension. "Yes, I think it's safe to assume that he's planning my demise. I don't plan to make it easy for him, and I'm prepared to spring a trap of my own on him when the time comes. One way or another, I'll correct my mistake of letting him escape years ago." With a nod, Temari replied, "Just be careful, Hokage-sama. And if you're willing to accept us as new shinobi in your village, we'd be very grateful." Grinning, Hiruzen turned to face Naruki. "All I ask in return is that you three be there for Naruki-chan. She could use friends like you three." After giving Naruki a quick glance, Kankuro let out a quiet sigh. "I suppose we can make that work. I just wish she'd stop making fun of me." Naruki gave him an innocent look and blinked. When did I make fun of you? I think you're fun. Plus, I got to summon the Excalibur because of you. At this, Kankuro frowned and started to cry crocodile tears. Don't remind me of that. Makes me feel like you hate me when you bring up that Okami. My butt still hurts. After a brief moment of frowning, the vivacious blonde gave him a radiant smile. You know what you need. A whoopee cushion. Sit on that and make people laugh. That should make you smile, right? Slinking off to a corner, the black-clad shinobi curled up into a fetal position and started muttering to himself. She hates me, I know it. As Temari attempted to comfort her brother by giving him a pat on the back, Naruki turned to Hiruzen and said, "What did I do? I thought he'd like my suggestion." Naruki-chan, you need to learn how other people think and feel about certain things. I know you mean well, but you're torturing that poor boy, Hiruzen said, massaging his temples this time. Naruki pouted, approached Kankuro, and once he had his attention, gave him a pat on the back and an embrace. There, Mr. Funny Pants. If it'll make you feel any better, I could show you one of my boobs. At this, Kankuro became alert and turned to gaze at her, his eyes wide. Seriously? Snickering, Naruki replied, of course not. I do have some modesty after all. No, I'll try to introduce you to a nice girl that might like you. I'd have to search really hard though. So mean to me, Kankuro said, deflating and curling up in the corner once more. After scowling at this odd response, Naruki finally decided to dismiss it. I'll try to learn what's the right thing to say to the clown man. For now though, you wanted Sandy Man and me to deal with that Danzo guy, right? Just point us in a direction and we'll go have some fun. Hiruzen gave Kankuro a pitying glance for a second before turning back to Naruki. I'm 100% certain that Danzo and his root forces reside underground somewhere. Knowing you though, you'll find it easily. Bust in, take down everyone in your way with lethal force, and kill Danzo Shimura. Finally, I want you to collect every piece of evidence you can of his many crimes. Do you understand your mission? Naruki gave the Hokage a salute, and Gaara grinned as he nodded. Roger Hokage-sama dude, we've totally got this. Come on Gaara-kun, let's go play hide-and-seek with that rotten old bastard. Before he and Naruki left the room to search for a rotten, malevolent old man, Gaara gave a small laugh. Temari gave the Hokage a worried look as soon as they were gone. I know Gaara's never been wounded before, but this is dangerous, even for him. Are you really sure they can do this? The third Hokage nodded his head and gave Temari a comforting smile. Yes, the two of them will pull off this mission without a problem. Naruki's insanity is her greatest weapon. She can do the impossible whenever she needs to. Pairing her up with Gaara, who has never been hurt before, will only aid her in this mission. The two of them will undoubtedly work exceptionally well together, and I'm honestly eager to hear the good news when they're done. There is literally nobody else I would or could assign this mission to, no matter how skilled they may be. Just try to have faith in them, and believe in the fact that this will only bring them closer. As Jinchuriki, it's important that they bond with one another. They'll be the support for each other that they really need in their lives. After a moment of staring at the Hokage, Kankuro laughed to himself. Naruki's crotch seeker is deadly enough. If she uses that against this Danzo guy, he won't stand a chance. He was joking. Hiruzen flinched at the thought of having been nailed by it in the past. I know personally just how effective that technique is. If Danzo's not careful, he's going to lose his nuts before she takes his life. Have to say, I'm not sure which is worse, the pain of losing his balls or how she'll end up killing him. With another drop of perspiration, Temari remarked, something tells me it's best not to think about it. The Hokage said, indeed. Now, tell me all the details you know about this invasion plan. I want to be fully prepared for everything he has planned. Temari nodded and started to explain everything she and her siblings knew in great detail. Root office. Danzo yelled, what the hell do you mean they've found us? With fury, who the hell has invaded my private domain? I'm sorry, Danzo-sama. It's just two people, one of them is the demon vessel, and the other is Gaara of the Sand. Their purpose here is currently unknown. Danzo grumbled as he said, one can never tell when it comes to the demon vessel. He's completely unpredictable, it's impossible to tell how he even found his way into our headquarters. That's the thing, Danzo-sama. The demon vessel is a she, apparently. And she and her friend are slaughtering our men. As he tried to process what had just been said, Danzo looked at his subordinate blankly for a moment. But then a plan occurred to him, and he grinned. Capture her. We can use her to breed future demon vessels, ones that won't be so unruly. Go. Naruki was heard saying, "Ah, none of that now, Mr. Grumpypants. Would you like it if I talked about your wrinkly old penis and how it's nothing special? After all, we, demon vessels, are super special and you're just a grumpy old man. What the hell does that have to do with what I just said?" Danzo asked, narrowing his eyes. Naruki emerged from the shadows, tapped a finger against her chin, and tilted her head in a cute way. "Nothing, I guess. You're kinda strange though, old-timer. Hiding out underground like a mole. Don't you ever get lonely down here?" "Never. Now what are you doing here?" The young blonde gave him a sly smile and shrugged. "I'm here because Gramps gave me the order to deal with you how I saw fit. I think I'll turn you into a pretzel first, then a basketball, and finally a football. Knock you around a lot and rip out your hair, maybe even feed you to a kitty. Ooh, I've got the perfect animal friend for you to play with in the forest of death. She'll be so happy with her new chew toy." Danzo grimaced and took off his bandages, exposing Sharingan eyes in his arm. "I see, so Hirazen's finally given the order. I'm not surprised that he'd send you after me. After all, you're the most unpredictable person in the village, if not the world. I won't make it easy for you though." From behind Danzo, a voice said, "Just as we won't make it easy for you. Now die." Danzo screamed in agony as each Sharingan on his arm was pierced by what seemed like a million tiny pinpricks before he could turn around and see who had ambushed him. He noticed a bunch of sand-based Senbon sticking out of his arm when he looked down at it. The fact that his arm was crushed a second later, causing blood to spray from the sand, only made matters worse. "You son of a bitch." Before witnessing Naruki move in for the kill and decapitate Danzo with a wind-enhanced kunai, Gaara uttered the words, "Do not talk about my mother in such a way." "Very well done, Naruki." Naruki squirmed and blushed slightly. "Ah, you're just so darn sweet, Gaara-kun. You always know what to say to me," she laughed. Gaara merely nodded his head and smiled before getting ready to grind Danzo's body into paste with his sand. He chose not to, though, because he wanted Naruki to enjoy herself first. Rather, he went and started searching Danzo's office for anything that would help them establish Danzo's wrongdoings and gain some influence over Danzo's council allies. While he was doing that, Naruki started playing with Danzo's body, giggling to herself. She joyfully exclaimed, "And a twisty here and a noogie there, and now look. You're a pretzel." After she had completed bending Danzo's body in ways that would have been extremely painful if he were still alive. "Now, let's make you into a fishy." Her companion gave her another look and gave a quiet laugh. "When are you going to tear his body apart?" Looking curiously at Gaara, Naruki said, "Do you think your puppet brother would be willing to play with his decrepit body for me? In due time, my friendly friend of sandiness. I'm playing with my new puppy puppet. I might even make him dance in front of everybody in the village. Then again, people probably wouldn't like that. Gaara gave her a look and then gave it some thought. "Yes, I believe he will. If I ask him to, he should do it," he said after a few more seconds. She pulled out a kunai and started carving into Danzo's face, giving the impression that he was grinning broadly. "Yai, I wanna make him dance through the streets with a big ol' smile on his face. I know just how to make him smile too." She shrugged and said, "Yay. Now he can pretend to be the Joker." "Wait, he's dead, oh well. Who's the Joker?" the red-headed man asked after giving her a questioning glance. "Nobody important," was Naruki's response. As she started to poke her kunai into Danzo's nose, she exclaimed, "Just somebody that wishes he was a bunny rabbit. Bunnies rule. Boopy boop boop boop." Choosing to put his friend out of his mind for the moment, Gaara at last discovered something that caught his interest. "Here we go. It looks like he had some kind of business deal with Hanzo in aim. And one of the most recent crimes he's committed is against Konoha itself. Working with Orochimaru to try and oust Hokage-sama so he could take his rightful place as Hokage. Let's see what else we can find." After completing the disfigurement of Danzo's body, Naruki hopped over to assist her friend in gathering more proof against Danzo and his friends. Gaara-kun, are you really sure you want to leave Suna for Konoha?" Gaara raised her eyebrows and replied, "Of course. There's nothing for me back in Suna. I've a feeling that I'll be much happier here than I ever could be back home." With a smile, Naruki put an arm around Gaara's shoulders. Of course you will be. You've got me with you here, after all. Don't worry, I'll make sure to make things extra sexy for ya. He gazed at her in amazement, and the redhead blinked. What does that mean, exactly? After giggling and prodding his nose, the blonde skipped around gathering anything she thought might be helpful. She glomped Gaara and kissed his cheek, making the young man blush intensely. Woo no Seth, I know this though, she exclaimed. She let him go, giggling a little, then picked up Danzo's lifeless body and exclaimed, let's go go go. We need to make him dance through the streets for everyone. With a quiet laugh, Gaara closed everything in a storage scroll and trailed behind his companion through the base and back into the daylight. The following day, as he made Danzo's disfigured body dance with his other puppets, Kankuro appeared a little disheartened. At the moment, he was in the middle of the village with a sizable crowd, watching in wonder and horror as Kankuro performed a brilliant puppet show for everyone. I would almost like for someone to end my suffering at this point. As he forced Danzo to perform the splits, he hopped back up on his feet and spun around like a ballerina, thinking to himself. Oh well, I've reached that point. Naruki cried out, yes, dance my little ballerina. Dance, and then burst out laughing. All we need now is some music. Maestro, please. I'm a maestro now. Meh, never mind. Music coming right up. After hearing the author's voice, everyone blinked. The fact that Shinedown's song, I'm Alive, started playing, despite the fact that they had no idea who they were or why the author was playing it, made the situation even stranger. However, Naruki thought the author's choice was hilarious and gave a joyful clap before turning to face Kankuro. Mr. Puppet Dude, make them dance. As he started to make his wooden and human puppets move to the music, Kankuro pleaded, somebody kill me. Please. After chuckling to himself, Hiruzen turned to face his surrogate granddaughter. Was this really necessary, Naruki-chan? Then he said, yup. He was a meanie and had way too much support. This is like a slap in the face to the baddies of the village, and by doing this, they'll have to be more careful in the future when dealing with stuff. In other words, think of this as sending a message. The Hokage gave a sympathetic nod. I see. That makes sense. Very well. Parade his corpse through the streets for all to see. Just try not to scar little children, okay? After blinking a few times, the young woman gave Hiruzen a dumbfounded look. It's going to be a little hard not to, Gramps. Might have to leave the whole emotional scarring thing to the parents in this case and hope they don't just make things worse. With a sigh, Hiruzen nodded his head once more. Good point. Ah well, just make sure the message is read loud and clear. I've got to return to my office. I want you to come see me once you're done with this little show. It's time to give you your inheritance and get you moved into your new home. She joyfully exclaimed, Kandu Hokage-sama, and then danced to the beat in her head. On his way back to his office, Hiruzen could only laugh. You will always make life interesting, Naruki-chan. Later on in the day, as Naruki surveyed her new home, she was practically jumping in place. It was quite spacious, certainly enough to accommodate her entire family and more. She genuinely couldn't control the energy that wanted to explode inside of her, even after they had already moved all of their belongings in. So she started running around the big house, laughing gleefully the whole time, leaving her friends and family to do as they pleased. After his adopted daughter had left, Zabuza let out a sigh and briefly rubbed the bridge of his nose before settling into one of the couches and reclining in its comfort. She has way too much energy. But at least she doesn't have to pretend to be a boy anymore. Gotta look on the bright side. Haku laughed and sat down on the love seat, deciding to simply wait for his girlfriend to settle down and come back. Just admit it, Dad, you're happy about the fact that you won't have to see us being affectionate with one another as two guys. Zabuza glanced at Haku and laughed a little. You're right, seeing you two kissing and whatever else you were getting up to when you were both boys. It didn't feel right to me. And before you snap at me, I don't mean it in that way. I'm fine with everyone's sexuality, nothing about that bugs me. It was just weird to see after figuring out he was actually a she. It was awkward and I was eagerly awaiting the day when she wouldn't have to hide her gender anymore. Ah, was someone feeling a little upset because his citizens were getting along? Poor Zabu-chan, Yugao smirked at him. Yeah, laugh it up. Didn't you feel a little awkward when you knew her true gender, but had to see her in disguise having those moments of public displays of affection? I'll admit, it took me a while to get used to it, but I feel so much better now. knowing they can be open about their relationship rather than having to hide certain things from people. After giving Haku a sympathetic nod, the violet-haired woman took a seat next to him. That's understandable. Oh, before I forget, I wanted to give you fair warning. You might want to have Naruki apply silencing seals to all the rooms. Hayate-kun and I are going to break in my new bed. I figured you suffered enough at the last house. Unless, of course, you like hearing me scream out his name. In which case, we'll gladly enjoy ourselves. This caused Zabuza's eyes to widen in horror before he leapt from the couch and rushed to locate Naruki. Yugao burst out laughing at this as soon as he left, then turned to face Haku. And what about you? Planning to sneak into Naruki-chan's room and cuddle? Haku shook his head and sighed. He blushed deeply as he said, you know full well that Naruki's the one that sneaks into my room to do that. It's torture, because she loves to wear that see-through nightie of hers. Yugao gave Haku a gentle pat on the back and giggled when she saw that he was unable to look her in the eyes. You'll be all right, just don't take things too far with her, because I don't think you two are ready for such a thing yet. Then again, Naruki might try to push for that sooner than I would like. With a sigh, the young man nodded his head in agreement. Naruki has already done something intimate with me before. She used it as a form of torture to extract information from me. She's already quite the seductress, especially when she wants to be. If she pushes for something like that, what do you expect me to do? Yugao smiled at him and said, just make sure she uses that contraceptive technique so she doesn't get pregnant. Knowing her, she's likely to forget if she isn't reminded to do it. Haku let out a sigh and gave a nod of agreement. That's true. Sadly, I fully expect her to try something soon. She's rather bold, after all. Yugao cracked a smile and said, she's always been that way. Naruki knows what she wants and she does whatever it takes to get it. Trust me, if you want to remain sane, you should just go along with it. And if she wants in your pants, don't try to fight it, or who knows what she'll do. Sweating, Haku uttered, I'm not sure I'm ready to take that step though. Yugao just chuckled before getting up and leaving to go to her room and unwind for a bit. Haku shook his head and closed his eyes after she was gone. I'm doomed. She appeared behind him and planted a kiss on his cheek, and Naruki exclaimed, ah, no you're not. You're gonna be juiced fine. When Haku saw Naruki suddenly, he screamed and collapsed from the couch. Don't do that, Haku said, pausing to catch his breath before turning to face Naruki. She pouted and said, Dia, but I wanted to surprise you. You know IWUVU. You're da bestest Haku-chan in the whole wide world. Haku just gave her a clumsy smile while sweating once more. I don't know what to say to that. Naruki glomped her boyfriend after giggling. Admit it, you love me. Now let's go have some fun, she said, clutching his cheek. Certain obscene images flashed through the ice user's mind, causing him to blush slightly. What kind of fun? Naruki smiled brightly at him and said, I dunno. Maybe pull a prank or something. Or we could train together. Or even just go out on the town for a while. Anything's great. With perspiration running down the back of his head, Haku remarked, oh, that kind of fun. Good. Naruki leaned back and gazed into her boyfriend's eyes, blinking. She slapped him on the nose as a form of discipline for having a filthy mind and said, you had your mind in the gutter, didn't you? Silly Haku. Now come on. Let's see if we can find Anko-chan. Haku asked inquisitively, Anko, are you going to invite her to live here with us? With that, Naruki grabbed her boyfriend's hand and hurried out the door with him. Yep, Sakura-chan too. Then again, she probably doesn't want to leave her parents just yet. Oh well, we won't know until we try, she said. Ahead, kinky times. Now I can see it. Haku grinned wryly as he thought to himself. With Naruki in my life, it will never be boring. As she bounced around with Kushi, the bunny, Naruki grinned broadly. They had set up a whole room for Kushi after they moved into their new house, which gave him complete freedom to move around, poop all he wanted, and generally just enjoy living there. Additionally, Naruki and Kushi had agreed to compete in a hopping competition to see who could cross a makeshift finish line first. But Kushi didn't seem to mind. He enjoyed spending time with Naruki. Haku couldn't help but smile in confusion as he observed this odd sight. Anko, Sakura, Gaara, Temari, Kankuro, and Zabuza were all with him. They were all quite entertained by what they were witnessing. Dang Kushi, you make it look so easy. All that hopping around is kind of exhausting. You're one awesome little dude, Naruki exclaimed as she and Kushi finally crossed the finish line. The others blinked in surprise at what they saw when Kushi appeared to be proud of himself. This bunny felt very proud. Kushi, everything okay? Asked Haku uncertainly. Kushi appeared to puff out his chest a little as he gazed up into Haku's eyes. Haku just nodded when he saw this and then stepped back alongside the others. He's never been this expressive before. Naruki-chan's had quite the effect on him. Sakura smiled and said, I don't know. I think it's kind of cute in a way. More important than that though, she said as she looked at Naruki, shouldn't you be training for the finals? You're up against Tenten and you know what she can do with her weapons. After blinking a few times, Naruki turned to face Sakura. Maybe, I dunno. I kinda just go with the flow and let things happen. So long as I have fun, I don't really mind. I think I can beat her though if I absolutely have to. I can totally take her if I want. Boo it, what if I don't feel like it? Don't you want to be a Chunin, Naruki-chan? I thought you wanted to be Hokage someday, Haku said, scowling at his girlfriend. The bubbly brunette sighed and replied, even if I don't become a Chunin right now, I can still become one laterish. There's no big rush. Boo it, if you really want me to, I'll kick Tenten's butt and then whoever else's butt I need to kick. But, could I do anything to prove that I'm worthy of the rank of Chunin? I don't know if I have what it takes. My randomness can only get me so far, you know. After giving her a scowl, Zabuza bent over and embraced her. He gently stroked her hair with his fingers. All you can do is try, Naruki-chan. You're already incredibly skilled for your age, and I've seen some of the things you can do firsthand. Just give it your all and show everybody exactly what you can do. And just know that even if you don't make Chunin that I'm proud of you, okay? But I have a very strong feeling that you'll make Chunin no problem. So give it your all. Naruki grinned as she listened to her father's heartbeat and gave him a hug in return. Thanks Dad, I'll give it my best. I'll definitely be sure to make you proud of me. With a small laugh, Zabuza gave her a gentle pat on the back. I'm still getting used to this, Dad, thing. Feels so strange, I swear. Regardless, I'll always be here for you, Naruki-chan. I'll always protect you, I'll always love you as if you were my real daughter, and I promise to always cherish your smile. I'll protect that smile of yours with everything I have. With a little giggle, the teen with the whiskers said, thanks. It makes me really happy to hear you say that. Zabuza answered, anytime kiddo. Then he got up and assisted his daughter in getting up. Now, why don't we go out back and get some training in? I want to hone the skills you already have, and I'm thinking of getting you an appropriate weapon. Then again, you have the monkey summoning contract, don't you? Have you begun learning how to use a bow staff? Naruki nodded and continued, yep. I kinda don't have one though, but they've at least taught me how to use one. Yugao-chan has taught me Kenjutsu as well. Before, I didn't have a sword of my own. But now I have Excalibur. So I can really put Yugao Oni-chan's teachings to good use. Though I'd still like to get a bow staff of my own. It'd be neato. After giving her a sly smile, Zabuza led Naruki and the others out back to their own private training area, saying, I want to test something, Naruki-chan. Follow me. He grasped Kubikiribocho and thrust it downward, the sword standing straight up, while glancing at his daughter. Try and lift my sword, Naruki-chan. Naruki blinked at this, shrugged, and approached the sword. She paused and looked into her father's eyes before extending a hand for the handle. She took hold of the handle of the Might Zanbedu and raised it off the ground after noticing the encouraging look he was giving her. She blinked a few times in surprise and exclaimed, wow, this thing's a lot lighter than I thought it would be. As the others gaped in disbelief, Zabuza couldn't help but smile. He was patting her head. My sword has chosen you to be its next wielder. When I finally do pass away, I want you to take up my sword. Bond with her and show her that you can make good use of her if and when the time comes. For now, I think we should go and get you a staff like you wanted. That Tenten girl, her father is a blacksmith, isn't he? Perhaps we should ask him to make you one. We'll have to place certain seals on your staff once it's made, but I assure you it's going to be a fantastic weapon for you. Naruki nuzzled her cheek against her father's chest and glomped him. She said, don't even talk about dying yet, okay Dad? You're going to live for a long time. Okay. Gazing up into his eyes. Yai. Thank you Dad. But. Zabuza gave her a hug in return, laughing and softly stroking her hair. Don't you worry, Naruki-chan. I have no intention of going anywhere anytime soon. We'll be a happy family for a long time. Now, I've got a lot to teach you. After we're done training for the day, we'll go to the Higurashi weapons store and talk to Tenten's father about getting you a custom-made staff. Sound good? Naruki exclaimed. Yep. That sounds wonderful. Sue, what are you going to teach me first? Well, we'll begin with. After 3 days, Naruki yelled, Gu Enma. Use double edge, and gestured dramatically toward a tree. Enma just gazed at his summoner in blankness. He was called upon by Naruki today to teach her various skills, including the use of her new staff. She still had a lot to learn, even though she already knew the fundamentals. She was hyper again, and he didn't want to risk brain damage from her using him to whack random objects, so he would have let her use him in his staff form. That wasn't a concern at all, in fact. Simply put, he didn't want to be held by her when she was so agitated. What's wrong Enma Denma Fenma Kenma? You don't want to play with me? Naruki asked, tilting her head cutely as he continued to stare at her blankly. Enma quickly sighed and looked into her eyes again, facepalming himself. I thought you were going to take this seriously, Naruki-chan. And besides that, I'm not one of those Pokemon things you mentioned to me before. I don't even know an attack called Double Edge. Naruki shrugged and said, oh well, okie dokie Mr. Pokey, let's get to training seriously then. Whatcha gonna teach me Mr. Kong? Donkey Kong, or do you wanna be Cranky Kong? He's kinda grumpy, but he's still cool. Enma groaned after saying, I don't know what you're talking about anymore. Anyways, we're going to go through an advanced form today that you can and should use with this new weapon of yours. I'll show you what to do and I want you to try and copy my form. Unless you're planning to just beat people's brains in with that thing. With a pout on her face, Naruki cried, ooh, I didn't even consider that possibility. That sounds fun. I wonder, do you think people would get mad if I broke that Neji guy's head? He's such a jerk. Enma just started telling her what to do while facepalming for what seemed like the 1000th time today. Focus Naruki-chan. I know you'd like to bash Neji's brains in for everything he said, but doing so wouldn't do you any favors. I know you're upset, and after hearing what he said, I'm upset too. Maybe you'll get a chance to put him in his place later. I don't know. For now though, focus. Once we're finished, we'll spar. I want you to put everything I've taught you to use during our spar so I can see where you need improvement. Naruki yelled, yes sir Mr. Monkey Doodlehead. Let's have some fun. Prior to starting her full training, Gaara and Haku watched from the patio, both of them grinning, while she and Enma trained. She's really something, isn't she Gaara? The brunette replied, I like her. She's the first friend I've ever had. Though that birds and the bees talk certainly taught me a few things. I'm amazed I can even look at her without blushing. Yeah, you get used to it. She seems to really like you, Gaara. I'm not entirely sure what kind of relationship she wants with you, but I'm willing to accept you as part of the family. Just try not to maim and or kill anyone during the finals, okay? Unless you're killing an enemy, in which case, knock yourself out. Haku sighed. Then, gazing into Haku's eyes, Gaara said, and what should I do if she and I meet in the finals? I don't want to hurt my new friend. That's entirely up to you, Gaara. I'm sure she'd be happy if you fought her with everything you have. At the same time though, I don't want to see her hurt. However, I'm not entirely sure what Naruki-chan wants. Still, I think you'll know what to do when the time comes for you two to fight in the finals. Gaara sighed and replied, I do not wish to fight her. She is dear to me, and she'd be upset with me if I killed her friends or maimed them in any way. I will do what I must to earn my promotion to Chunin, but I do not know if I can fight Naruki. I just hope she understands. I'm sure she will. Naruki couldn't bring herself to hurt you either. So if you two do end up meeting in the finals, one of you likely has to forfeit. But again, that's dependent on what you both choose to do. Gaara asked in the hopes of receiving a suitable response, I understand. Tell me, what should I do against Ino Yamanaka? She and Naruki-chan are friends, correct? I've never fought someone without the intent to kill or maim at the very least. How should I fight her? The user of Ice sighed and replied, I can't really help you there. I suggest spending the rest of this month to train and realize new uses for your sand. Perhaps learn a few elemental ninjutsu. Surely you could figure out some way to defeat your opponent without killing her. If you'd like, I could teach you how to utilize your Sansenban in a way to render your opponent unconscious. I can put my targets into a death-like state, so it shouldn't be too hard to teach you. You would help me? Asked Gaara inquisitively. Why not? You're a friend of ours now, Gaara. Besides, it might be fun teaching you some new things. I'm curious though, what will you do if you end up facing Sasuke in the finals? He's up against your brother in the first match after all. And, considering the fact that your brother uses puppets to fight, they likely wouldn't fare too well against Sasuke's fire jutsu. If your brother was smart, I'd say he should forfeit before anything can happen to his puppets. Unfortunately, Kankuro isn't likely to listen to me. You, on the other hand, he'd listen to you. So, with that in mind, I have to ask you, what will you do if you fight Sasuke Uchiha? Haku asked. A clone of Naruki appeared in Gaara's face and burst out laughing before Gaara could react. I don't care what you do to Sasuke. He's a meaniehead. So go wild, Gaara-kun. If you really wanna feed your mother some blood, then you should give her Sasuke's. I don't think he'd mind. Besides, the blood doesn't flow properly. After all, he obviously can't get it up. I mean, if he cooled, playing with himself would definitely help relieve some of his stress. But nope, he's always grumpy and he's always scowling too. He claims he wants to restore his clan, but I don't see it happening. So yeah, go ahead and feed mommy his blood, okay Gaara-kun. Gaara laughed and replied, very well, Naruki-chan. I'll destroy him for you. But how do you know he can't? Get it up. The bubbly brunette sighed and replied, I already explained that. But really, I don't think he's got a sex drive. He has all these fangirls after him, and despite how pretty some of them are, he doesn't care about any of them. No reaction of any kind. He's always an abrasive asshole to everybody and he's never happy. Masturbation can really help relieve stress, but I don't think he can. Haku scowled thoughtfully for a while. You might be right about that. I don't think he can feel an attraction to anybody on any level. He's obsessed with one goal, revenge against his brother. He's a mean person that doesn't care about anybody else but himself. Naruki-chan, what are the odds that he'll go to somebody like Orochimaru for power? Because it's obvious he doesn't feel like he's getting stronger being cooped up in the village like this. The girl with the whiskered face replied, oh, he'll definitely go to Orochimaru for power. And a bunch of us will likely be sent to retrieve him. Big ol' mission, attempted murder, he puts up a huge resistance, blah blah blah. Did you know that in canon, he got away with all of his crimes without any repercussions? And he tried to kill Sakura-chan so many times, and yet somehow, they still ended up together. Even had a daughter. If that isn't fucked up, I don't know what is. Haku and Gaara were so confused that they had to blink a few times. A moment later, Haku said, might want to stop breaking the fourth wall now, Naruki-chan, as he gazed into the clone's eyes. Ah, it's fun though, grumbled Naruki's clone. I will destroy him if he tries to harm you and your friends, Gaara said with a frown. Before she kissed him, Naruki said, ah, you're just the sweetest Gaara-kun. After finishing the kiss, she took a step back, made a circle, and then went poof, leaving the real Naruki alone. She was still training with Enma, but when she paused for a second, it was clear she had her clone's memories. Gazing at the flush on Gaara's cheeks, Haku grinned. Trust me, you get used to her antics after a while. As he attempted to force his blush to disappear, Gaara remarked, so I can imagine. After 2 days, as she skipped down the crowded market street, Naruki was as joyful as she could be. At the moment, she was having a great time on a date with both Sakura and Gaara. They had gone to a movie together and had lunch together right afterward. She had held hands with her girlfriend and boyfriend the whole time they were at the theater. Here they were now, observing Naruki as she hopped from store to store in an attempt to choose what to buy. So how are you feeling, Gaara-kun? Are you getting used to life here in Konoha? Are you excited to be on a date with the girl of your dreams? The Pinkett inquired, glancing at Gaara. A foreign object landed on the redhead's head before he could respond. What is this? He asked, turning to Naruki and blinking a few times. It's a hat. I wanted to see if it fit you. Boo it, Naruki said with a smile. Sakura cracked a smile and said, that's just not the right look for you. If you want to go shopping for some outfits for the three of us, I know the perfect place. Follow me. Naruki took Gaara's hand in hers and started skipping with him once more as they followed Sakura. Naruki scowled briefly before stating, they won't allow me in here. I tried before, but, after arriving at the store Sakura had mentioned. Sakura said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay. Now that I don't have to hide my true gender, do you think they'll still be able to recognize me? I mean, the whiskers are kind of a dead giveaway that it's me." "Maybe." As he pulled her into the store, Gaara cut her off. "You'll be fine with us here, Naruki-chan. If the shopkeeper tries to kick you out, we'll handle it." The shopkeeper's first reaction upon seeing Naruki was one of bewilderment at the unfamiliar face. Then she frowned sharply as she saw the whisker marks. "So, the rumors were true. You are a girl now. Regardless, you're still not welcome in my store, you filthy." The woman felt something tightening her airway before she could say another word. She looked down and saw a sand-made hand squeezing her life from her. She noticed that the sand was coming from the red-headed boy who had entered next to Naruki. "Either you let my girlfriend shop here, or I drag you before the Hokage and see what he wants to do about you and all the others like you. And trust me when I say that you'd rather I kill you here than see what Hokage-sama does to you." Gaara replied. The sand tightened around the woman's throat as she commanded, "Let me go." "Hokage-sama won't do a thing. He never has. So get lost." Sakura approached Naruki and gave her a shoulder pat. "Send a shadow clone to meet with Hokage-sama. Inform him of what's going on. And Gaara-kun, can you please let her down? It wouldn't be a good idea to go killing people willy-nilly whenever they make you angry." Gaara scowled, but followed her advice. The woman coughed and rubbed her neck in an attempt to relieve the pain after being lifted out of the sand. Then she got up and gave Gaara a scowl. "I want you three out of my store this instant. You are never welcome to come here again." Despite her obvious distress, Naruki followed Sakura's advice. Later, unable to even look at the shopkeeper, she moved behind Sakura and Gaara. She muttered an apologetic, "Sorry." Sakura just turned to give her girlfriend a hug. "You have nothing to apologize for, Naruki-chan. You've done absolutely nothing wrong. These monsters, on the other hand, deserve to suffer for treating you this way." With no regard for the law established by the third, the woman cried out, "Funny, you're calling us the monsters when the real demon is standing right there. If only fourth Sama had killed the damn thing instead of sealing it into a human vessel, we wouldn't have to suffer its presence." Gaara was staring at the woman with a frown now. "You monsters create Jinchuriki like us. You monsters seal Biju into normal people like us. And then you treat us as if we're the monsters that we contain. How does that make any sense to you? To anyone? No, woman, we aren't the monsters. You are." The Hokage entered the store with Naruki's clone ahead of the woman before she could respond. "You are quite right, Gaara-kun. As for you," he stated to the shopkeeper, "I do believe I forbade anyone from speaking about the Kyuubi. The crime for breaking said law is execution, but I'm willing to cut you a break." As she glanced from the Hokage to Naruki, the woman appeared to be quite proud of herself. "See, I told you he wouldn't do anything." She dared to interrupt him, and Hiruzen scowled at her. He went on, slamming her with his murderous intent until she fell to her knees and spat the contents of her stomach on the ground. "You didn't let me finish, you insufferable wretch. As I was saying, before you interrupted me, I was willing to cut you a break. Treat Naruki-chan and Gaara-kun as you would a regular customer, give them the same deals you would anyone else, and we'd have no problem. But now I think you should be given some time to think on your actions. Anbu, take her to Ibuki and tell him to have some fun with her. I think there's something really important I need to do that should have been done much sooner. However, it would be best to wait until after the Chunin exams are over and there aren't so many foreign shinobi present." Naruki asked, "You're planning something, aren't you, Gramps?" As she gazed up into his eyes. The third grinned at her and replied, "Indeed I am, Naruki-chan. For now, why don't you three pick out some outfits that you'd like to wear? I'll pay for everything you want today." Naruki said, "Thanks, Grandpa," before gleefully perusing every outfit on exhibit. "Ooh, this one looks nice. Ooh, that one does too. And this would look great on Gaara-kun. That one totally fits Haku-kun. So many outfits I never got to try before. This'll be fun." As he watched the three of them choose various outfits and try them on, Hiruzen could only laugh. Sakura and Gaara both blushed profusely when Naruki modeled one of the slightly risque outfits she had selected for them. "Naruki-chan, you deserve to be this happy. Leave all the bigots to Grandpa." The evening before the final exam, a gentle knock on Haku's door roused him, and he moaned. He opened his eyes groggily and turned to face the door, where Naruki was standing in her transparent nightgown. The fact that she was not wearing any kind of underwear caused him to flush instantly. Everything was right in front of him, and he was unable to speak at all. For quite some time, he stumbled, but nothing logical came out. As she sealed the door in the wall next to it, Naruki blushed pretty. She then locked the door and approached her boyfriend cautiously. Stop staring so much. I. Haku gave Naruki a tight hug and scowled a little. Sweetheart, you don't have to do this if you're nervous about it. I won't push the issue, and I won't force you to do anything you don't want to do. I love you Naruki-chan, and I only want you to be happy. After a little fidgeting, Naruki calmed down and planted a kiss on her boyfriend's lips. Looking him in the eye, she said, I want this, Haku-kun. I'm just nervous. I wanted to do this before the finals tomorrow. I'm ready, I promise. And I'll even use that contraceptive jutsu too. I can't help but be nervous. What if it hurts? What if I'm not good enough to please you? What if? You don't have to worry about any of those things. It'll be my first time too, but we'll take it slow and I'll try to be as gentle with you as possible. Let's start by taking this off, he said, giving her a tender kiss to calm her down, and then he assisted Naruki in taking off her nightgown, revealing her nude in front of him. The normally vivacious blonde blushed deeply when she saw Haku examining her nude body and then pushed him back on the bed. No fair. Why you get to see me naked, and you've still got those pants on? Take them off, Buster. Lemon starts. If you're not interested, you can skip. Haku laughed and followed her instructions. After he had stripped, he put her back on his bed and kissed her collarbone and neck. He moved down slowly, very slowly, kissing her body repeatedly until he got to her breasts. He smirked as his girlfriend writhed under his touch as he gave them repeated, light kisses. As he moved his hands and lips over her body, she was groaning softly. Finally, he reached down to her honey pot with one hand and slowly inserted a finger inside, opening her nether lips. As she wriggled on his bed a little, Naruki begged, Haku-kun. More. I want more. Probing her inner sanctum with another finger, Haku teased, your wish is my command, milady. He knew he had found her special place when she whimpered and then groaned loudly. When she reached her release, he couldn't help but smile while gently massaging that specific spot. Before he positioned himself over his girlfriend, he licked his fingers clean with his mouth. Activate the jutsu and then we'll continue. Okay, Naruki-chan. Following directions, Naruki used the jutsu and saw a seal-like form materialize over her pelvis. She put her arms around Haku's neck and pulled him into a passionate kiss when she was ready. Haku took this as a sign and threw all of his length into his girlfriend. He held her close and kissed her lips, cheeks, forehead, jaw, and lips again when she whimpered into the kiss. I won't move until you're ready, sweetheart. Just let me know when. Despite the tears streaming down her cheeks, Naruki gave a single nod to indicate that she understood. She was prepared for him to start after the pain subsided, which took a good few minutes. It's okay now. Please, Haku-kun, make love to me, she whispered as she kissed him once more. Haku grinned at his girlfriend before gently pushing into her. He grinned even more when she started to groan. He started kissing and sucking her neck while still making love to her, leaving a few hickeys behind. They continued their slow pace for a while, neither of them wanting this moment to end. They did, however, start to pick up the pace after a few minutes, with Haku moaning as her inner walls tightened around his penis. This feels so good, Naruki-chan. I don't know how much more I can take. With her face buried in his neck, Naruki muttered, I'm close, Haku-kun. Just a little more, I love you so much. His girlfriend was flushed against him as he caressed her hair with one hand and caressed one of her breasts with the other. Thankful that she had used the jutsu first, he grunted and started to pour his semen inside her as he felt his release approaching. He was grateful that his girlfriend had the foresight to install silencing seals when she screamed out her release, because otherwise, they would have woken up the entire household. Naruki flipped them so she was on top this time after they had descended from their peaks. She started to grind along his length, whispering, I'm not done yet, Haku-kun. I want more, so much more. She smiled when she received the desired response. Haku chuckled softly as he started to play with her breasts, enjoying the sensation of both them and their sex. It's going to be an extended evening. All I can hope for is that she can walk tomorrow. The end of Lemons. Safe for rereading. Final exam the following day. As Naruki stood in a line with other Chunin hopefuls, she was all sunshine and rainbows. Some of the other competitors were becoming concerned because she couldn't stop laughing. They chose not to worry about it, though, assuming it was just another strange Naruki phenomenon. However, one of the women in the arena was aware of her condition. Ever inquisitive, Ino approached Naruki and whispered, "Sue, how was it? I assume you gave your virginity to Haku-kun." Instead, the dark-haired adolescent blushed, "Yes. And it felt wonderful. It hurt at first, but once the pain went away, it was pure bliss. Haku-kun was so gentle and understanding with me. I'm kind of amazed I can stand here, let alone walk here. I can't stop thinking about it." Ino grinned and said, "I'm happy for you, Naruki-chan. I'm really glad you snagged yourself a nice guy like that. Thank you, Ino-chan. Anyways, any idea where Sasuke is? I thought he'd have been here by now. He's up in the first match, after all," Naruki asked. Ino nodded and continued, probably thinking about making a flashy entrance. Gotta stroke that big ego of his, after all. The proctor for the last exam phase interrupted them before they could exchange any more words, drawing their attention. He held up a sheet of paper with the matchups listed on it and said, "All right kiddos, here's the deal. Hayate's busy, so I'll handle things from this point forth. The name's Genma Shiranui and that's all you need to know about me. Here's a look at the pairings, just for reference. Got it? Good. We'll wait for Hokage-sama to give his speech, then I'll ask that you take your places, whether that's down here or up in the waiting area." Hiruzen moved forward at this time and spoke to everyone. Naruki couldn't help but frown as he spoke, with everyone listening intently to every word. She was suspicious of the man up there with her grandfather. She would assume it was Orochimaru in disguise if she had to make a guess. If so, though, why would Hiruzen let him get so close? It looked so dangerous. Naruki scowled even more after the Hokage concluded his remarks and gave Genma the order to start the matches. Sasuke is still missing. To make the most spectacular entrance possible, would he really risk being disqualified? Naruki and the others shrugged it off and went to the waiting area after leaving the arena floor. "Do you think he'll show up?" asked Naruki as Ino moved to stand next to her. "Hell if I know. It's not like him to miss a chance to show off like this. You sure he's not just late because of your sensei, right?" The ponytailed blonde shrugged. Naruki gave a headshake. "Not a chance. Kakashi-sensei knows better, so if he doesn't show up soon, my bet is that something's happened to him." Ino scowled and opened her mouth to speak when she heard applause from the crowd. She looked around, blinking a few times in bewilderment. She let out an agitated sigh as she looked down at the arena floor. Of course he'd make a flashy appearance. The idiots that fawn all over him are eating it up. How can they not see what an asshole he is? It's not like he cares about any of them. Tenten positioned herself on Naruki's opposite side and uttered the words, "Hell if I know. I think they're all morons. They've put him on a pedestal and can't see that he's not as great as they seem to think he is. How can you even tolerate being on the same team as that ass?" "Patience. Lots and lots of patience," said Naruki with a dry laugh. "Kakashi-sensei and Sakura-chan are cool, but Sasuke, he's a pain to try and deal with." Tenten replied, "I can only imagine. Man, just look at that smug grin on his face. He's eating this up. Yeah, that's Sasuke for you. Oh well, not much we can do about it. I think I would have preferred it if he was disqualified," the smirking teenager said. Ino said, "You and me both. I wonder if Kankuro will fight him. Doesn't he use puppets or something?" Naruki gave a nod of approval. Yep, I got him to make that Danzo guy dance in the street with his puppets. That was a fun day for me." Ino laughed. "Yeah, I remember seeing that. That was pretty funny. Poor Kankuro looked so defeated then. Like he was resigned to his fate. You sure you weren't just trying to pick on the poor guy, Naruki-chan?" Tenten inquired. "Nah, I like the guy. Real nice, kinda dumb, but an all-around good guy. He's my friendly friend of happy dappiness." This caused Ino to laugh even harder. "I'm sure he's happy to have a friend like you, despite you picking on the poor guy sometimes." Naruki became frustrated at this point and replied, "I don't mean to pick on him. I just wanna have some fun. And I want him to have fun too. I don't want him to turn into another Sasuke. All grumpy, never wanting to wear pants, small wee, yada yada." At this, Tenten and Ino both started to perspire. Naruki, what are you talking about? You totally lost us just now. I dunno. I just like to say random things sometimes. It's fun. The vivacious blonde shrugged. Tenten shrugged and said, I see. Well, so long as you're having a good time. As he patted Sasuke on the shoulder, Kakashi said, remember to be careful, Sasuke. That seal will only do so much to prevent the curse seal from spreading. If you start to call on its power, you will be disqualified. Fine, I won't use the damn thing. Now can we please get this match started? Sneered Sasuke. Kakashi let out a sigh at the obvious disregard. He gave Genma a quick glance and a single nod before vanishing to join the rest of the audience. When he left, Genma glanced between the two combatants and was about to declare the fight over when Kankuro raised his hand and yelled, Proctor, I forfeit. I'm a puppeteer. Mr. Uchiha over there has an arsenal of fire jutsus that he could use to torch my creations. I'd rather not risk losing them just for a chance to become a chunin. I can always take the exams another time and hope I have better luck next time. Sasuke frowned in rage at his opponent's refusal to engage in combat. He scoffed and turned to join the others in the waiting area instead of lashing out at the coward. When he was proclaimed the winner by forfeit, he didn't even pay attention. As he waited for both genin to join him in the arena, Genma yelled, Ino Yamanaka and Gaara, come down. Your match is up next. Ino turned to Naruki and grinned. She teased Naruki by kissing her cheek after saying, well, looks like I'm up. Wish me luck. She then left to go to the arena with Genma. At the sudden gesture, Naruki flushed a little, but instead of thinking about it, she turned to Gaara and grinned at him. Just gimme a sec, Gaara-kun. I've got a surprise for you. Before he just began to descend the stairs to join Ino in the arena, Gaara cocked his head in perplexity. When Ino and Gaara first entered the arena, they blinked upon seeing Naruki bouncing from one side to the other, then to another. She glomped onto Gaara and kissed him on the lips after she had finally finished moving. Before she and Ino shared an umbrella, she said, I made you a promise, Gaara-kun. 1, 2, 3, Naruki snapped her fingers after saying that. To everyone's horror, blood spurted from the earth like countless tiny fountains. As the arena floor turned red from the rain, Naruki grinned at her boyfriend and remarked, see. I made it rain blood for you, Gaara-kun. Just like I promised I would. In spite of the gory scene, the redhead couldn't help but laugh. Yes, yes you did. Thank you Naruki-chan. But, who's going to clean this all up? Then Naruki snapped her fingers to stop the blood fountains. Meh, they'll get a crew in here to fix everything up in a bit. For now, enjoy the shower of blood. It's all for you cutie pie, she said. She then used magic to make her umbrella vanish before skipping off to join the other competitors. All Ino could do was look horrified at the scene in front of her. She was appalled by everything, even though she knew Naruki had promised Gaara that he would do just that. She looked at Genma, who was twitching furiously. He was covered in blood, and it was clear that cleaning his hair, face, and clothing would require a great deal of washing and showering. She couldn't hear what he was saying, but she could hear him murmuring to himself. As Naruki had foreseen, a team of experts hurried into the arena a short while later to tidy up the grounds and restore everything to its original appearance. After they were done, they gave Genma a quick glance and gave him a fresh outfit. Genma muttered, still annoyed by what had transpired, thanks. Are you both ready? Genma asked, glancing between Ino and Gaara. When he saw that they nodded in agreement, he said, then begin. Before giving the order for his sand to lash out at Ino, Gaara took a moment to look her in the eyes. His intention was to keep her alert so she would be unable to react. But he was taken aback when Ino put on some trench knives and charged them with wind chakra. She rushed over to him after slicing through his sand as if it were nothing. Gaara frowned at his current predicament and made the decision to apply the lessons he had learned from Haku and the others during the previous month. In order to keep Ino from seeing him, the redhead quickly withdrew his sand and created a shield out of it in front of himself. Gaara was waiting for her when she ran to the side. She flew into the arena wall as a big, round block of sand crashed into her chest. Please forfeit, Ino-san. I don't want to hurt you. Naruki views you as a dear friend, Gaara said, calmly observing her. Ino grinned at him and replied, hey, and here I was about to say the same to you. I'm not giving up just yet. I'm going to make sure I at least cut you once before this fight is over. Gaara found himself grinning in gratitude for her efforts in spite of the danger. Very well, then how about we make a wager? If you manage to make me bleed, I'll forfeit the match to you. However, if I make you bleed first, you will forfeit. Does that sound fair? In spite of the consequences of such a bet, the Yamanaka heiress couldn't help but smile. That's fine by me, Gaara-kun. Though I think you'll regret making such a wager. After all, I have no plan to lose to you. So let's have some fun. Their match started seriously after Gaara gave her a sly smile and said, "Give me your best shot. I won't accept anything less. Ino Yamanaka, I intend to prevail in this battle no matter what. I'd like to discipline Sasuke. Miss Yamanaka, if you're this confident, I'm excited to see what you're capable of. Go ahead and do it." Gaara watched as Ino ran around, attempting to get past his barriers. He was keeping her at bay with his barriers of sand with little effort. Indeed, every one of her attacks effortlessly sliced through any barrier he erected, but even with his intense training, the barriers would instantly reappear just seconds after she had taken them down. Poking and prodding at her opponent's guard, the ponytailed blonde scowled to herself. "I'm not getting anywhere with this. I must do something significant that he won't anticipate. I will not be defeated by him." The redhead asked his opponent, "What do you fight for? Why do you want to advance so badly?" while maintaining a composed gaze. The questions caused the green-eyed girl to pause for a moment. But she knew it was a bad idea to remain motionless, so she started moving again right away. She chose to respond in a way that would make Gaara laugh while she attempted to come up with some sort of strategy. "Gaara-kun, I stand up for my friends and loved ones. Sakura is my best friend, and I want to move on and crush Sasuke for having the audacity to touch her in that way. In addition, I want to prove to Naruki-chan that I've changed and that I'm not some dumb fangirl anymore." In addition to that, she chanced a quick glance up at Naruki and found herself grinning at the encouraging expression her fellow blonde was giving her. "I see something in Naruki-chan. She's innocent, but she's full of determination to do what's right, not just what's easiest. I want to protect that innocence. I want to get rid of all obstacles that lay before her." "And," she said, turning back to Gaara after a brief pause, looking intently into her opponent's eyes. "I want to prove that I'm worthy of her love. I don't care if we can't have children together with the both of us being women. Naruki fascinates me. I want to be with her. I think I see what Sakura sees in Naruki, and I want to be loved by her as well. So, I want to prove that I'm worthy of her." Gaara nodded once after his eyes widened slightly. "I see. Naruki is something special, indeed. Not only is she my dearest friend, but she's the first one I've ever made. Naruki makes me feel whole, I think is the most appropriate term. I'm still learning what love really means, but I'm certain that I'm dearly in love with her. She completes me. Because of her, I will never needlessly kill again. I will use my power to protect her and those dear to her. If she means just as much to you," looking deeply into Ino's eyes, he replied, "then I say you're worthy of her love, as well. However, I will be the one to move on and crush Sasuke Uchiha." At this point, Ino launched a frontal attack, cutting through defense after defense until she was close enough to strike him. But as soon as she approached, a huge sand tornado erupted, knocking her backward. She watched as the twister calmed down and she was able to see Gaara again, skidding along the ground on her feet. But Ino folded her arms across her chest and decided to ask him a question this time, complaining to herself, "Clones. It would be clones, wouldn't it? Oh well, why do you want to win so badly? Why do you want to fight Sasuke so badly? You barely know him and yet it's obvious to me that you will kill him, if given the chance. What did he do to earn your anger? The Uchiha is insufferable. Naruki doesn't like him. I promised Naruki that I would kill him for her. From what I understand, Sasuke has had practically everything handed to him whether he has earned it or not. He doesn't care for the women who flock to him, nor does he care for his teammates. In fact, he injured someone Naruki and I care for. You said it earlier. Sasuke hurt Sakura. I'm glad to have gotten to know her and I vow to protect her, as well," Gaara said, grinning sinisterly as he and his clones started to spread out and circle Ino. "Sasuke craves power, no matter the kind. If Naruki is right, Sasuke will leave the village if he is promised more power faster than he's getting here. I will not risk anyone getting hurt because we showed the Uchiha mercy. He does not understand the concept of such a thing. If permitted, he would kill everyone on his quest for revenge." He turned and looked back into Ino's eyes. "Ino, you may just want to humiliate and or crush Sasuke Uchiha. However, in order to keep Naruki and the others safe, I will kill him here, in this arena. Can you vow to do the same? The platinum blonde gave a small scowl and glanced at Sasuke, who was clearly bored as he watched the fight. She gave Gaara another look, scowled a little, and shook her head. Despite how I might feel, he is a shinobi of Konohagakure. An ally. It would be wrong of me to kill him, even if he deserves it. Sadly, so far, he hasn't done anything that warrants his death. But, looking intently into Gaara's eyes, she replied, I understand where you're coming from, Gaara-kun. I respect your desire. The most I could bring myself to do to him is cripple him somehow. I couldn't bring myself to kill him, yet. Gaara discovered that he was grinning evilly. Yet, so, if he did do something monstrous, you would kill him. Good to know. However, I'm afraid it's time to put an end to this fight, wouldn't you agree? I do believe I have the advantage. Ino felt something snake up her leg before she could ask what Gaara was referring to. She swiftly reached down and cut through the sand that had started to encircle her leg, her eyes widening in shock. Then, as he was about to bury her in the sand tomb, she jumped back to escape. She inhaled a few soothing breaths and started to move at a pace she had never disclosed to anyone before. She proclaimed, We're not done yet, Gaara-kun. I win. Before slicing through one of the Gaaras, fervently hoping that she had struck the correct one. Unfortunately, the Gaara she hit broke apart, sending sand to the floor. She realized she had lost at this point. Several sand sanbon hit Ino, and Gaara grinned to himself. But the one that nicked the back of her left leg was the only one that actually drew blood. They both knew who had won the moment the first drop of blood began to slowly trickle down the back of her leg. You fought admirably, Ino Yamanaka. You are, indeed, worthy of Naruki's love. After removing her trench knives, Ino turned to look at Gaara. I guarantee that you are going to absolutely love me, Gaara-kun. Thanks for showing me a good time. She approached him, put her arms around him in an embrace, and given him a wink before leaving to have her minor injuries attended to. There's no use in allowing them to become infected in any way. Gaara blinked and briefly glanced up at Naruki. She merely gave him a thumbs up and a smile, and he gave her a small smile before heading back to the contestant waiting area. As soon as Naruki saw her boyfriend walk into the waiting room, she glomped onto him and smiled to herself. She blushed a little and said, Ino-chan, huh. I didn't think she liked me like that. Good job, Mr. Ultra Cutie Huggy Pants. I'm glad you won. And, holding his girlfriend close, Gaara accompanied her to the edge so they could look down. Yes, I am not surprised that she feels for you so strongly. But, if you make each other happy, I do not see a problem in allowing her to be with you. Unless you do not care for her. I do care about her. Ino-chan is really cute. It's kind of my turn now, though. Wish me luck, Gaara-kun. Naruki said, giggling a little. The redhead put his lips to Naruki's and held her close. A few moments later, they parted ways, and he let her go, observing her walk out of the room and down to the arena. You don't need luck, Naruki-chan. Still, good luck. Naruki turned to face Tenten as soon as she entered the arena. With a slight frown, she asked, Tenten, we don't have to fight if you don't want to. I don't have anything against you, and I'd rather not have to fight if we can help it. But, if you want to continue with this anyways, well, I have ways to win this fight. That's a guarantee. Tenten sighed and said, I'm not just going to give up, Naruki. But, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm going to give you the best fight I can. With or without those Pokemon things. She then cracked a smile and said, I've gotten stronger, Naruki. You may have a unique type of skill on your side, but I promise that I'll be the one to win this fight. I'd very much like to advance and make the rank of Chunin. The blonde held her arm out to her side and gave a single nod. She called forth her bow staff and clenched her hands around it tightly, concentrating on one of the seals etched into her skin. Okay then, Tenten, I've trained hard to become even stronger than before. I've even developed a new technique to help fight girls like you. But, I'd prefer to defeat you using skill, speed, and a little bit of luck. Because, like you, I'd like to advance in rank. First though, I've gotta ask something. Tenten gestured for Naruki to proceed after blinking a few times. Do you feel the same way that your teammate does? Mr. Buttface Hyuga, I mean. He was really mean and I'm not happy with what he said and did. I don't like what he did to Hinata-chan. I also really didn't like the things he was saying about me. I get enough of that crap from, the whiskered teen asked, nodding gratefully as she looked around at the audience. She shivered a little before returning her gaze to Tenten's. From all of them, the things they've said, the things they've tried to do to me. The girl with the bun took a moment to absorb the information. It clicked, and she covered her mouth in a gasp. Dear Cammy, I'm so sorry. No, of course I don't think like that asshole. You're just a sweet girl that doesn't deserve to suffer that kind of talk. In fact, I respect you, Naruki. You're well on your way to proving that women can make strong ninjas as well. I'm tired of men looking down on us. It's my goal to be even stronger than Tsunade-sama someday. After giving Tenten a grateful smile, Naruki turned to face the proctor. Mr. Gooberpants, we're ready, let's have some fun. In the bleachers, gazing down at Naruki and her opponent, Sakura grinned to herself. Gaara and Ino's earlier argument had been enlightening, especially when Ino mentioned wanting to be with Naruki. She also understood that if she wanted to develop the strength and skill that the two of them had demonstrated to her, she had a lot of training ahead of her. Haku was seated beside her. Are you okay, Sakura-chan? Still shocked, he asked, gently taking Sakura's hand. After giving Haku a quick glance, the pinkett shook her head. Yeah, I'm a little caught off guard by the confession, but that's not what's really bothering me right now. I'm just wondering how Naruki-chan will deal with Tenten. She's trained so hard, but Tenten's a ranged fighter. She's likely skilled in the use of all of her individual weapons as well. I guess I'm a little worried. Anko threw her arms around Sakura's and Haku's shoulders and embraced them tightly, saying, Meh. You've got absolutely nothing to worry about, girly. Naruki-chan's gonna kick Tenten's ass and then make her way all the way to the finals. I'm more curious about what this anti-girl killer is like. If she pulls it out in this battle, I'm eager to see how it works. Kakashi, who was seated behind Anko and the other Naruki lovers, laughed a little. If it's anything like her crotch seeker, then women will be living in fear of such a powerful attack. I just wish Naruki hadn't taught the majority of kunoichi how to unleash the full power of the crotch seeker. Now men throughout the village are terrified of doing anything dirty. Still, it was Naruki's choice in the end. He replied with a shrug. I'm proud of Naruki. She's become a splendid kunoichi and is only going to become truly unstoppable if she keeps up at the pace she's growing. Tenten doesn't stand a chance. Guy, who was seated next to him, sighed in, as much as it pains me to say this, you are right, my hip rival. Young Naruki is unpredictable and has proven to be far more powerful than others her age. From what I understand of her, she has studied under Hokage-sama and learned how to defend herself from him. Aside from that, Zabuza has adopted her and has very likely trained her just as hard as Hokage-sama did in the past. Tenten is just not ready for such a youthful opponent. Neji laughed and replied, so, she's received special treatment all her life, huh? I guess fate favored her. If it was me down there, Naruki wouldn't be leaving the arena alive. She is nothing more than a common whore. Forming relationships with as many people as she has proves my point. I still don't see what my cousin sees in that girl. Anko pivoted and scowled at the decomposing Hyuga. She cracked her knuckles as she said, I thought Hinata had beaten the sense into you at the end of your match against her. Obviously, you have not learned your lesson. Naruki is not a whore. Naruki is an innocent little girl who has seen too much of the darkness in the world. Naruki is one of the few who are truly pure of heart. However, she has grown strong so that she'll never have to hurt at the hands of scum like you. Now, are you going to shut up and watch Naruki kick some ass? Or do you want to play hide the snake with me and learn just how terrifying a kunoichi can really be? Guy clamped a hand down on Neji's shoulder, holding him in place as he tried to snap back at her. Don't say another word, Neji. You've already proven to be most unyouthful. I don't want you to say any more. Neji laughed and replied, fine. We'll see who fate shines on today. Will it be Tenten, or will it be the insane girl that hid her true gender like a coward? Anko gave Neji a savage scowl before letting one of her snakes bite her cheek. Might want to get him some help. I know he's not getting the antidote from me. I suggest you hurry. Guy, she said, turning to face Guy as the wound began to change color, finally settling on a nasty purple hue. Might Guy let out a sigh and briefly shook his head. Foolish Neji, so unyouthful. After picking up his pupil, he quickly disappeared, heading as fast as he could to the hospital. After Guy and Neji had left, Anko went back to her previous seat. She huffed and sat down again, crossing her arms over her chest. Damn that little shit, calling our Naruki a whore. He doesn't know a damn thing about Naruki-chan. Kurenai took her place next to Kakashi and sat down next to Anko. Don't let it bother you too much, Anko. I've heard nothing good about that Neji kid, so it's best to just ignore someone like that next time. As for Naruki, she said, gently taking her friend's hand in hers. Looking down at Naruki and Tenten as the fight finally started, she said, I'm glad you're happy with her, Anko. Tell me something, though. Observing that she had the attention of not only Anko but also Naruki's other lovers, Kurenai inquired, nobody has, hurt her, have they? It took a moment for Kurenai's request to take effect. Haku shook his head quickly when they finally understood what she was implying, saying, no. Thank goodness for that. Naruki wasn't hurt in that way by anyone. Her disguise worked wonderfully in that regard. Kurenai exhaled a sigh of relief and put a hand to her chest. Thank Kami. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, let's watch the match. Personally, I'm cheering for Naruki. She replied with a wink. With a quiet laugh, Haku said, thank you, Kurenai-san. He turned back to the front and saw Tenten on the defensive due to Naruki. You're capable, Naruki-chan. Naruki waited for Genma to declare the start of the match while taking a deep, soothing breath. This caused the blonde to move much more quickly than Tenten had anticipated. She swiftly called forth a broadsword and deflected Naruki's first blow, only to flinch in agony as Naruki converted her unsuccessful attack into a knee strike using the bottom of her staff. She jumped backwards, avoiding her extremely talented opponent, wincing. What a waste. She is good. Fantastic. Tenten blocked Naruki's attacks and then kicked her hard in the chest, sending her reeling back a few steps. Naruki twirled her staff, then zipped in close again, thrusting her staff forward at her opponent repeatedly, not wanting to give Tenten time to act. When Tenten noticed that Naruki was momentarily stunned, she hurled the broadsword to the ground and swiftly unfurled one of her scrolls, showering the blonde with a barrage of weapons. Work, please. When Naruki saw the weapons flying at her, she grinned to herself and said, perfect. The young woman quickly grabbed two small fans and concentrated on forming her chakra in a particular way while restraining her bow staff. Naruki waved her fans and used a wind technique just before she would have turned into a human shish kebab, scattering the weapons everywhere, some even raining down towards Tenten. Tenten glanced at Naruki and scowled deeply as she fought to keep her weapons and the wind at bay. Before, she didn't have those. This implies that she most likely picked up how to use them over the month-long vacation. Oh no. The weapons mistress had no space to attack again as Naruki focused on all of her senses and started a lethal dance, her fans waving and sending wind gusts and wind sickles flying at Tenten. The elaborate dance that Naruki was performing captivated everyone in the audience. They were even more shocked to see that, despite her dancing, all of her attacks were going straight at her opponent. Tenten glared at her adversary and, realizing she would need to push through in some way, she stood up and grabbed another scroll. Tenten ducked around another wind sickle that Naruki threw at her, then hurried closer. Tenten leapt into the air and rained another barrage of weapons on the younger woman as soon as she was only a few feet away from the blonde. The woman with the whiskers closed her eyes and started dancing around every weapon that was thrown at her. The blue-eyed beauty opened her eyes and gave Tenten a sly grin after the weapons stopped flying in her direction. And now, you lose. Sorry, Tenten. Tenten was hit by something strong from behind before she could wonder what Naruki was referring to, and she crashed face first into the ground a considerable distance away. She moaned, pushed herself up gradually, and spat blood. She noticed two Naruki standing there when she turned to look behind her. One was holding what appeared to be an adamantine staff, and the other still had the fans. Tenten questioned, where did you get all of these weapons? How did you get so powerful? As she winced in agony from the blow Naruki had delivered her the moment before. Some of them were gifted to me. Others, Daddy had made for me. Then this one is sort of a gift from Gramps, Hokage-sama. Say hi to King Enma. Shrugged the Naruki with the staff. The adamantine staff abruptly changed back into the Great Monkey King, Enma, and Tenten blinked. Tenten waved slowly at him, feeling the world spin. I don't even know what's going on anymore. Naruki hurried forward, caught Tenten just as she started to fall, blinking at her sudden lightheadedness. The blonde noticed that her eyes were slightly glassy as she looked into them. She realized what was happening when she reached up and felt Tenten's forehead and then her cheeks. As Naruki turned to face Genma, he yelled, she needs medical attention. Now, she's burning up. After giving a nod, Genma pressed a button on his earpiece to summon a medical team to transport Tenten to the infirmary. The proctor pronounced Naruki the victor of the fight after she left. He later listened to the crowd's conflicted responses to the recent events. Many people started jeering at her in an attempt to make her flee and give up. The others cheered Naruki on and gave her a hearty clap. At this point, he dared to look at Naruki, who was trembling in place with her fists clenched at her sides, and scowled pitifully. Alas, poor girl, nobody is entitled to treat her in this manner. Naruki was unable to even bring herself to look up at all the jerks shouting disparaging remarks about and to her. She started to feel worse the more they made fun of and insulted her. I apologize, Gramps. I'm not sure if these monsters can be forgiven. Making you and my family proud of me was all I wanted. Then everything had to be ruined by these jerks. Will I ever be accepted by these monsters? I detest this. I detest them. Naruki asked, Gaara-kun. What's wrong? As she felt someone put their arms around her and looked into their eyes. For the moment, the redhead put her face against Naruki's chest and put a hand on the back of his head. Ignore them, Naruki-chan. Let's get you upstairs. I'm so proud of you. I know Haku and the others are, as well. If it means anything, I love you, Naruki-chan. I refuse to let them hurt you or demean you any longer. I hope Hokage-sama can do something to rein them in before we're forced to annihilate them. She inhaled Gaara's aroma as she was escorted back upstairs to the waiting room, letting it soothe her tense nerves and make her smile. I also adore you, Gaara-kun. When they arrived at the waiting area, Naruki saw Rock Lee and Choji come down the stairs, prepared to start their own match. Later, she and Gaara strolled back to the railing and gazed down at the field. Admiring her boyfriend, she said, Thank you, Gaara-kun. I just wish they wouldn't be so cruel. I don't get it. Why do people hate us simply for what we hold? It doesn't make any sense to me. We didn't do anything wrong. His green-eyed boyfriend just held her close and said, I don't know either, Naruki-chan. People are cruel. I believe they always will be. At least, not until something really big happens to change their minds about us. I wouldn't count on a miracle like that, however. Just don't allow their words and actions to hurt you. You're stronger than they are. You're a far better person. You shouldn't have to live in fear, anguish, sorrow. He kissed her forehead and said, I promise, Naruki-chan, that I won't let any harm come to you so long as I can help it. You'll be safe with me. They heard Genma declare Rock Lee the victor of the fourth match before Naruki could respond in any way. They watched as Choji was taken away on a stretcher, blinking a few times as they peered down at the arena floor. For a brief moment, Lee was bouncing around, yelling something about the strength of youth. That sort of bullshit didn't appeal to Naruki or Gaara. Gaara sighed after a moment and met his girlfriend's gaze. It's my turn again. Do you want me to kill Sasuke for you? Or would you prefer I do something else? While gazing up at the sky as though thinking, Naruki pretended to tap her finger against her chin. She giggled and prodded Gaara's nose when she noticed him frowning at her a little. I did tell you that you can kill him, if you really want to. Sasuke's a bad person and chances are high that he'll try and hurt somebody sometime soon. Can you imagine if he went after Haku-kun or Sakura-chan? If he ever hurts someone we love, we'll make him pay. I honestly think you'd be doing everyone a favor by killing him now. But it's entirely up to you in the end. Do what you feel is best. The brunette replied, I understand. I know that if I were to kill him, I would earn the scorn of the people. After all, you've said it before. The people of Konoha worship Sasuke as if he's a prince or a god of some sort. However, I am used to being hated and feared. So long as you and our family are with me, I can bear the scorn. So, I will do what I must and end Sasuke's life. He looked up at the Hokage and the man posing as his father at this moment. After noticing Naruki nod, he went on, You've noticed it as well, I assume. That man is not my father. I believe that man is Orochimaru. He is going to kill the Hokage. What do you want to do? Naruki looked up at her grandfather figure and scowled pitifully. I don't know. I want to believe in him and believe that he'll be okay, but I don't know if he can win. He's so strong, but he's not like he was back in his prime. Looking at her boyfriend, she replied, I'm concerned about somebody else, though. That Kabuto guy, I think he might be associated with Orochimaru. I don't have any proof, but my instincts have been screaming at me that something just isn't right about that guy. I don't want to let him hurt anybody. Gaara gave a nod of agreement. But before he could respond, the proctor yelled for him and Sasuke to descend for their duel. He scowled and said, "If you're right, then the moment I go for the kill is when they'll begin the assault. I fully expect Kabuto to interfere and save Sasuke's life. Be ready to act." He gave Naruki a gentle kiss on the lips before descending into the arena. As soon as he was gone, Naruki shifted around a little before looking back at the Hokage. "Don't die, please, Gramps. If you're gone, I'm not sure what they'll do." The only real deterrent to people trying anything significant was the possibility of you becoming involved. "But who will keep me safe if you're gone?" That's when it finally clicked for her. "Daddy and the others will still be there for me," she thought, giggling quietly to herself. "I still do not want to lose you, though. I am aware that attempting to assist you would not give me a realistic chance of defeating Orochimaru. Last time, I had a great time with my friends and surprised him. However, this time, I'm not certain what I could do to permanently put him down." She heard Enma yell for the match to start at this moment. "Do it, Gaara-kun. Sasuke can't defeat you. I just hope he doesn't draw on the power of that curse mark," she said, grinning to herself as she looked back down at her boyfriend. Sakura and company. Previous. Ino had taken a seat on Sakura's opposite side shortly after Naruki had entered the field for her battle. "You fought really well. I was really impressed, Ino." The Pinkett grinned at her friend. "But, is it true? Do you like Naruki-chan, too?" she asked. As she observed Naruki's battle below, Ino nodded. "I meant every word, Sakura. Naruki is special, and I want to be with her, too. I don't care if we can't have children together. I just want to be with her and be happy together with our huge, crazy family." They all turned to watch the altercation below as Haku chuckled softly and remarked, "In the end, we kind of just leave those kinds of decisions up to Naruki. It's up to her if she wants to invite you into our relationship." Naruki's family blushed intensely at what they saw. Silently, Haku exclaimed, "Wow. She's so beautiful. Did you know she could dance like that? How is she even fighting like that?" Sakura said, her blush deepening. Anko laughed and replied, "Damn. Gotta admit, seeing her pull this off is damn sexy. I wonder if she'll dance for me." "She might. She's such a special person and seeing her fight like this is absolutely mesmerizing." Haku grinned and recalled what had happened the night before. He blushed even more, and soon he was laughing strangely. Anko smirked at him when he saw this and leaned over to look into his face. I know that laugh. You had quite the good time last night, didn't you? Naughty Haku-kun. Maybe I should punish you, Haku's face became even more flushed. He was lucky not to have fainted yet. He turned to Anko to say something, but she leaned in and kissed him on the lips. Haku was struggling to think of something to say when they parted ways. "Oh, you are so much fun to tease. Now, enough of this. Let's watch our girl kick some ass," the snake mistress exclaimed, laughing to herself. "Sounds like someone had a good time last night," Kakashi thought, grinning under his mask behind them. "I feel like she wouldn't be standing, much less fighting like this in the finals, if she were anyone else. Normally, I would act like a father and tell them to behave appropriately, but I believe I'll let Zabuza handle that." In fact, talking about which, at this point, he looked at Zabuza, who was seated next to him. "You've been awfully quiet. What's on your mind, Zabuza?" Zabuza just grinned and said, "I'm just proud of her. My daughter's come a really long way when compared to when we first met. She knows I'm rooting for her, and she knows I'm here for her whenever she needs me to be. She's been in complete control of this fight from the very beginning. I don't think I need to say any more than that." With a nod of comprehension, Kakashi returned his attention to the field. After Naruki's victory, it was time for Rock Lee vs. Choji. Might Guy reappeared just before it started and took a seat on Kakashi's opposite side. "How's your student?" Kakashi inquired, meeting his eyes. Guy folded his arms in front of his chest and scoffed. "Neji will live. He won't be able to participate in the coming situation, but he brought it on himself with his unyouthful actions and words. After today is over, I plan to discuss Neji and his behavior with Hokage-sama. Something clearly needs to be done, but nothing I have tried has made any kind of impact." Zabuza grumbled, "Something does need to happen to make that boy behave. I still don't appreciate what he's said about my daughter. If he doesn't change soon, I won't hesitate to make him suffer. I love my daughter, Guy. Despite how hyperactive and crazy she can be, she is still a fragile young woman who has self-confidence issues. She is sensitive and certain things can really get to her. It might seem like she can just brush everything off, but inside, she's still an innocent little girl. So, for your sake, I hope something can get through that thick head of his. I want him to apologize to my daughter and mean it. As Guy watched his student engage in combat with Choji, he nodded in comprehension. He wanted to watch and observe Lee to see where he might need to improve, even though he already knew who would prevail in such a fight. I understand, Zabuza. For what it's worth, I apologize for my student's behavior. I'll step up my efforts and try to set things right somehow. One way or another, we will correct his attitude and make him a better person. If need be, as the person he's wronged, I would be more than glad to see Naruki-chan deal with him in her own way. That might be for the best, if Hokage-sama can't deal with him properly. For now, it looks like Gaara's fight is up now. You've done a good job with Lee, Guy. It's just a shame that he wasn't able to showcase what he can really do. Kakashi responded with a grin on his face. Thank you, Kakashi. I must ask, though, are you prepared to act if Sasuke takes things too far in this fight? Guy responded. Zabuza interrupted Kakashi before he could respond. I'm more worried about what might happen during this fight. If my instincts are right about this, then Orochimaru will make his move during this fight. And, considering he wants Sasuke, there's no telling what might happen. I suggest we move as soon as he calls upon the power of the cursed seal. Kakashi sighed and replied, damn it. You're right. That'll be the perfect time to start their invasion. The distraction will allow Orochimaru's men to retrieve Sasuke and flee with him. Is it bad that I'm hoping Gaara can crush him before they try to make off with him? Zabuza gave his friend a menacing grin and gave him a fist bump. Naruki-chan has already told him to kill Sasuke if he feels like it. In order to protect people, that might just be for the best. I know I shouldn't say something like that, but we need to do whatever it takes to protect our loved ones. Guy nodded his head and replied, as unyouthful as it is, I agree. I have never trusted Sasuke. He will not hesitate to unleash the power of his cursed seal, despite your orders otherwise. I don't think he cares if he disobeys your orders. The Uchiha craves power and will take any shortcut granted to him if it means he can kill his brother faster. Kakashi sighed and said, our first priority should be to protect the citizens and fight off the invaders. I just hope Hokage-sama and Naruki-chan will be okay. I'd prefer it if Naruki didn't have to kill anyone, but I recognize that it's a distinct possibility. It's a kill or be killed situation. I just hope she doesn't break down when it happens. After a moment of frowning, Zabuza looked down at his sword, which lay at his side. I'll go to Naruki's side once the invasion begins. If she does break down, I'll keep her safe and try to help her through it. I won't let anyone hurt her. Both Guy and Kakashi gave him a smile and a single nod. There was nothing left for them to say to each other. Rather, their eyes shifted to the fighters in the arena. Gaara. Gaara gazed into his opponent's eyes without emotion. The Ikibi container shook his head in dismay as the Uchiha glared at him, his Sharingan blazing. If you were smart, you would forfeit the match to me before we even begin. Should you choose to fight, I will kill you. The Uchiha smirked at the redhead after scoffing. You're overconfident if you think you can beat me. You should bow before me, Gaara. I watched your fight against that worthless bitch, and I was not impressed. With your pathetic skills, I'm likely to end up taking your life. Now bow, Gaara of the Sand. The Jinchuriki with the green eyes sighed and, do not insult Ino Yamanaka. She is what a kunoichi should strive to be. I guarantee that if it had been her you were to fight, she would have utterly destroyed you. However, where she would have shown you mercy as a fellow ninja of Konohagakure, I will show you no such courtesy. Sasuke, I sincerely hope you find peace in death, for I will show you no mercy. Genma yelled for them to start after realizing that their pre-battle teasing was over, and then he leapt away, attempting to avoid the impending altercation. This fight was going to get crazy if he was correct in his assumption. Sasuke immediately ran in his direction, ignoring the court that sped by. Sasuke's leg became entangled and he was hurled against one of the arena's walls before he could even get to Gaara. The Uchiha moaned in agony, scrambled back up, and dodged another strand of sand that attempted to slither up his leg. He might have changed his strategy if he had realized the trap Gaara was setting for him. But Gaara couldn't help but smirk wickedly on the inside, even though his face remained apathetic. You're a fool, I see. Do you really think you can hit me like that? To deal with people like you, I won't even need to relocate. When Sasuke finally got to Gaara, He tried to punch him, but a wall of sand blocked his blow. The Uchiha scowled at this and attempted to run sideways to attack from Gaara's blind spot, but he was once again immobile. He looked down at his body and saw that the sand completely covered the lower half of it. With lightning-fast reflexes, he launched a great fireball technique directly at Gaara. Gaara mocked the Uchiha's effort to break free. But in order to maintain the impression that Sasuke had him on the brink, Gaara released him and blocked the fireball with another sand barrier. The unfortunate consequence of this is that it turns his sand into glass, but the redhead didn't care. Instead, he cautiously observed Sasuke as he leapt backwards several times before daring to look at the wall behind him. The question of what the Uchiha was up to this time made Gaara frown. Before running away from Gaara and up the wall across from him, Sasuke smirked arrogantly at him. With a menacing grin, he concentrated on the chakra required to execute the jutsu he intended to use on his adversary. Electricity appeared to gather in his hand gradually and start making a loud noise that sounded like 1,000 birds screeching. He was about to charge at Gaara when the redhead surrounded himself with a dome of sand, surprising him. "You idiot, trying to protect yourself from this attack won't work. I'll take pleasure in ending your life before focusing on her." Sasuke glanced up at Naruki and thought to himself, "I will take pleasure in murdering her." Sasuke roared with laughter as the attack was charged to completion, then he went down the wall and charged directly toward the sand dome that concealed Gaara. But as he got closer to his opponent's defense, a huge wall of sand erupted in front of him, forcing Sasuke to charge through it, almost losing concentration on the technique. As it was, he knew that his slowly deteriorating technique was unlikely to allow him to break through the sand dome. Shit, hold it together. As Sasuke arrived at the sand dome, he barely made it through the dome with his Chidori. Sasuke frowned to himself as he looked through the hole and saw that his opponent was nowhere to be seen. What on earth happened to him? Was that technique really wasted on nothing? Rising from the floor behind Sasuke, Gaara grinned. He was about to impale his opponent with the spear of sand he was holding when feathers started to fall, covering the entire building and the arena floor. He scowled at this and started to thrust his spear forward, ignoring the pitiful genjutsu. But just as the spear was about to pierce Sasuke's heart, a man in a mask grabbed him and leapt away with him. "Remove the mask. You aren't fooling anyone, Kabuto Yakushi," the redhead said, glaring at the person who had just interrupted his fight. With a laugh, the man in the mask took off his mask and lowered his hood. "What are you planning to do with that information, Gaara of the Sand? You've betrayed Orochimaru-sama and attempted to kill his future vessel. You were to be our trump card against Konoha and its forces, but then you fell for that psychotic bitch. If it wasn't for the fact that we need Sasuke alive, I'd deal with you here and now. You're nothing more than a defective weapon, entranced by another failed weapon. You two are perfect together." With narrowed eyes, Gaara ordered his sand to rush forward like a tidal wave. However, Kabuto and Sasuke vanished before it could engulf them. Scowling, he replied, "Insulting me is fine. But saying that about Naruki-chan is another story. Kabuto, I will kill you." Naruki effortlessly dispelled the genjutsu that covered the stadium, and he also assisted Rock Lee in escaping the illusion. Additionally, it came just in time as several Oto ninjas surrounded the waiting area and tried to kill the two of them. Leading the charge and rapidly starting to eliminate their enemies was Rock Lee, who had already experienced his first kill. However, Naruki swiftly dispatched two of the Oto ninjas who had tried to attack her after removing the Excalibur from its sheath. Although they lacked great skill, they did have the advantage of numbers. Nevertheless, she and Lee were able to kill their opponents with ease. Naruki's eyes widened and she began to hyperventilate as soon as it was safe to do so. She started to tremble and fell to her knees. It wasn't any easier, even though she had been killed for the first time on the journey to the land of waves. I. Naruki looked up into her father Zabuza Momochi's eyes as she felt a pair of arms encircle her. Smiled at her and said, "I'm proud of you, Naruki-chan. You do what you have to do to survive and protect your comrades and family. If that means taking another's life to protect yourself, then you do it. This does not make you a monster. You're my sweet, adorable little girl. Just let daddy handle everything from here, okay?" The young blonde mumbled something into her father's chest while giving him a tight hug. She looked into his eyes and gave him a big smile when he asked her to repeat what she had said. "I love you, daddy." She let go of her father and started shyly putting her index fingers together while blushing profusely. She looked into her father's eyes and said, I want to show that you're my great dad and that I respect you. Would it be okay if I took your last name? I like being an Uzumaki, but. In an attempt to comprehend what his daughter had just said, Zabuza blinked a few times. He blushed a little and scratched the tip of his nose after it finally clicked for him. Why yeah, that'd be great, Naruki-chan. Now, do you feel up to getting out there and kicking ass? Or would you rather leave it all up to me and the others? Naruki looked up in the direction of the Hokage's last sighting. She scowled and shook her head at the barrier that was in place, keeping anyone from assisting the Hokage. I'm not sure if I could even get in there to help Gramps or not. Then there's Kabuto and Sasuke, she said, looking down at Gaara, who was hearing Genma speak to him. Daddy, I think I'm going to try and find those two. I want to stop them before they can hurt anybody. Zabuza gave one nod and got back up. Grasping his blade, he said, then do what you need to do, Naruki-chan. I trust you to know your limits. Then again, you've got a lot of power at your disposal. I think you'll be just fine, no matter what you might face. Kabuto and Sasuke won't know what hit them. With a smile, Naruki said, damn right. And, thanks, Daddy. After giving Zabuza a final hug, Naruki hurried away to meet Gaara. After she left, Zabuza went out and killed every invader from Oto and Suna. I'll protect my kids and this village from all of you jerks. As long as I breathe, you won't ever harm them.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.